Good. All of our testing worked, Patrick. I hope. Okay. Hopefully.
Live from Pasadena.
See if anybody is seeing anything yet. I'm seeing. Oh,
live from everywhere. We got little United Nations going on with Croatia and Paris, California.
It's the World Cup of movies.
Literally.
Actually, it was really funny being in Croatia because of the soccer game.
Oh, I bet.
Yep.
Oh, wow.
And like people were going nuts and all dressed up, and their national colors and flags and everything. And then, of course, they lost to Britain.
Bastards.
It's
It's so encouraging, like just to see people see the Scottish in Boston. I mean, it's like really, I love people. It's such a sketchy time we live in, and it's just so great to see people being drunks in the street.
Yeah.
A common cause, a common enemy.
Paris just won some big tournament or match a couple weeks ago, and it was wild. Like the streets and people were partying, and anytime something good or bad happened, all you would hear is like noise from around. I was at Notre Dame, of course, but just every surrounding area would just like erupt with noise. So just a really quick note to everybody watching that there is I think there's about a 15-second delay just between our Zoom call and what's being put up on the live stream. Just as an FYI, I don't think it'll affect any of us on the call, but just for the people watching on YouTube. Okay, well, on that note, I'm glad to see this is working, but thanks so much, everybody, for joining us for the official unofficial fan celebration for the 30th anniversary of Disney's The Hunchback of Notre Dame. I cannot believe it's been 30 years already. Time flies so quickly. I was just saying to Patrick before we got on this call that, well, it's been a whole 30 years since the movie was released, and it's been about 2 years since this event has been a work in progress. So it's great to see great to see it come together, and that everybody could be here to join the party. So my name's Emily, and joining me today is co-host Patrick.
It's truly an honor, Emily. And my name is Patrick Donahue. And today we will be going through a excellent cavalcade of guests. We'll be joined by producer Don Hahn, director Kirk Wise, and his co-director Carrie Trousdale was generous enough to speak with us yesterday for a sit-down interview, and that will be shared with our audience and the fans coming soon. And we are also joined by lyricist Stephen Schwartz and supervising animator for Frollo, Zielinski. And later today, we will be joined by story writer and screenwriter Tab Murphy. And on that note, we have our guests assembled. We have the cards set up. Let's get right into it. So starting off, just like to ask, there's no doubt that Disney's The Hunchback of Notre Dame is one of the darkest films in the Disney animated canon. Can you tell us about the creative process of working on and writing, especially for Stephen, the Hellfire sequence? And what challenges were involved with such a different scene than you're used to in your typical villain sequence for a Disney cartoon bad guy?
Well, I will tell you that when Alan and I wrote Hellfire and sent it in, we were sure we were not going to get away with it. We just thought okay, well, this is what we actually think should be in the movie, but we know Disney is never going to go for this, but we'll send it in. And then when they tell us no, then we'll come up with some sort of weaker or, maybe less psychologically complex version. And we were astounded that Disney said yes. Disney was a very different company at that time. It was the overall company was Michael Eisner, the head of the company. Jeffrey Katzenberg was the head of animation. And even though Michael and Jeffrey had their differences and ultimately split apart, they were both extremely courageous. They liked pushing the envelope, to use a cliche. They wanted to see how far they could take animation into the realm of adult fare. It was just a very different time, both in the world and a very different time at the company. It was a much braver time, if you will. And I think that is evidenced by the fact that Hellfire wound up in the movie. And I know Kirk and Don, you know, from an animated point of the animation point of view, there were a couple of little adjustments that were requested being made in the animation of it, but pretty mild. I'll let you guys speak to that.
Sure. Yeah. When we I remember first getting your demo, Stephen, with yours and Alan's demo, and we were just blown away by it. We were tremendously like excited by the dramatic and the animation possibilities. And you know, we knew immediately like the two perfect storyboard artists for this particular sequence were Paul and Gaetan Britzi. They headed up our Paris studio. Twin brothers, extremely talented artists and animators and filmmakers in their own right. And they basically sequestered themselves in their room in our you know little warehouse studio in Glendale. Probably for about at least for like 2 weeks. We didn't even see them. They were just like you could have put like police tape over their door, you know,
there was
crime
smoke
scene
coming out, yeah,
in progress.
smoke coming out of the door. Yeah.
And when the time came for them to present their board, they walked us through it with the demo tape playing on cassette, and our reaction, you know, we were absolutely captivated by their amazing, powerful drawings and their staging. But you know, rather than being greeted with wild applause, it was sort of greeted with silence, and we were all just you know still sort of staring at it, feeling just kind of the residual impact of the music and the image tied together. And I remember it was either Paul or Gaetan. It was saying very sheepishly, "Did we go too far?" And we said, "No, we love it." So I recall in animation, the one thing we did have to change is that Paul and Gaetan, I think, you know, being European, their drawings of kind of the phantom smoke Esmeralda who appears in the fireplace were topless. And we had to clean that up a little bit. Now I can vouch for Gary Trousdale. He personally went through every single effects drawing and made sure that Esmeralda was fully clothed.
It was a very difficult job. The other play, there's so many players in that sequence and in the movie itself, but I think of Roy Disney too. Roy Disney could have easily just said, "No, guys, this is just not my family," you know. And Roy was around. He was around every day, and he was supportive. I don't know. I don't know if he had a dark Catholic upbringing or what, but he was very supportive. And
I was going to say, yeah, we had a fan in Michael Eisner as well. I mean, Michael had a strong familiarity with the source material and understood how thematically important the sequence was to the entire movie. Really pivotal, and we got a surprising amount of support from the studio, and I will always be grateful for that.
It was like Steven said, it was a different time, and then he
Yeah.
added what Tony J and Kathy contributed in terms of a performance. And man, I always marvel at Kathy, who is a multi-talented, you know, animator, director, sculptor, everything. Animates this seminal character in the middle of all these animated features that are being done. That's you know, really memorable. And I don't know, it must have been intimidating for you, Kathy, too.
It was so exciting when I saw those storyboards and then listening to the music. I was like, "Oh my God, my dream came true." And I kept thinking, "Oh, they're never going to do this again." When I was animating it.
And you were right. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, all the inspiration was there, the music and the storyboards. And I have a funny little story to tell. So that song, I mean, when I was working on Hellfire, I listened to it all the time. When I was taking my little 3-year-old daughter, you know, somewhere in the car, I'd be playing Hellfire. And one day at breakfast, she started chanting some of the words, and I went, "Uh-oh, I've listened to it too much."
Yeah, at McDonald's. Yeah.
But that was just like, I mean, that song just absorbed into my soul, and I lived it like every day. Anyway, and
You know, Patrick, you were saying that it was a different take on a villain, on a, you know, on the antagonist, if you will, and one of the things that we were striving for with Frollo, who is one of my favorite characters that I've ever written. It was so much fun to go to that dark place and be him. But if you think of most of the villains in animation, including all of animation, not just Disney, in most of them, the villains know that they're bad guys. And, you know, they'll do something, you know, Jafar will do something evil and give an evil laugh, etc. The difference with Frollo, which is why I think he's more realistic and more complex, is that no one is a villain to himself. All villains think that they are justified in what they are doing, and or at least they find a way to justify it to themselves. And Frollo's psychology is such that he takes whatever negative, if you will, feelings that he has and projects them. His whole his whole psychological motive operation is projection. Like if he's feeling desires that he knows he shouldn't be, or he's ashamed of, it's not him, it's Esmeralda who's making him feel those desires, and so on. You know, or you know, it's Quasimodo who's falling for something that he shouldn't be, when it's actually Frollo falling for it. And that is a very, I think, common psychological, you know, whatever you want to call it, you know, perversion or whatever, is that projection. I mean, frankly, we're seeing it right now in government, where if you want to know what somebody's actually doing, just listen to what they accuse other people of doing. And that's Frollo to a T. And I think that's what makes him unusual among animated villains.
Very true.
It goes back to Victor Hugo's original novel. I mean, the Hellfire sequence, it has a few lines from Hugo's novel.
Yeah. I mean, we did a lot of research. I read that novel over and over again, albeit in translation. And, you know, for the animated feature, Frollo became the Minister of Justice, which I think he was in some of the other film adaptations.
Yes, the Charles Laughton version. Yeah.
Yeah, and I think that works quite well. In the Victor Hugo, of course, he is the Archdeacon, and in the stage adaptation of the animated musical, he went back to being the Archdeacon again. But either way, he is a figure of authority and rectitude, if you will, who is trying to deal with feelings and desires that go against his position in life. And it's why he can't admit that he feels them and has to throw those feelings onto other people and blame them for what he is feeling.
Certainly a frightful character. I mean, in particular, Kathy, is it true that it was your idea to do the sequence where Frollo sniffs Esmeralda's hair? You know, that's entirely from the Disney cartoon. That's just such a striking and eerie image. Like, it's the skin crawling.
well, actually, I believe that was Brenda Chapman who came up with the idea.
Really?
Storyboard, yes. So I just did the animation. So I just plussed what her idea. I believe that's right, Kirk. Is that?
That is right. Yeah. Brenda boarded that particular sequence that kind of scary, intimate encounter early on in the film between Frollo and Esmeralda. And yes, Brenda did do the sniff. And interestingly, as Stephen has pointed out, it was a very different time then, and Hunchback of Notre Dame was released with a G rating. These days, it would have been an automatic PG, no question at all. But
Except
what
for
we
Canada.
learned,
Canada's PG. We found that
really,
out.
well,
Yes.
there you go.
Yeah,
What,
it's too hard. This Disney cartoon's too hardcore for Canadian audiences.
Well, because when I was first getting, sorry,
let me finish my story. It's a
yeah,
good
of course, go ahead. Yes.
What we learned. This gets back to the famous sniff scene and Hellfire. What we learned is that in 1996, the difference between a G and a PG rating was literally the volume of a sniff and the volume of the word sin. In Hellfire, when Frollo sings, "This burning desire is turning me to sin," and all the red hooded priests loom up into frame. We negotiated our G with the ratings board by lowering the volume of the word sin and slightly raising the volume of the sound effect when the red priests come into view. So it sort of sounds in the final mix like this burning desire is turning me to whoosh. And the same was true for sniffing the hair. By just nudging the volume of the sniff down a bit in the mix, that was the difference between a G and a PG.
Wasn't it also the length of it? Because I remember you and Gary calling me into your offices to say, "Oh, we have to cut down the length of the sniff." It used to be
It's entirely possible. I wouldn't doubt that for a second.
Yeah.
I don't remember that specific conversation, but I'm sure you do.
Like, oh, we really love that scene, but we got to cut kind of the end off of it because of the rating issue. But
yeah,
it's
we just did a little frame trim.
Yeah. I remember that.
Sorry, Kirk, I definitely did not mean to cut you off intentionally. I'm
no worries.
sorry. So a couple of seconds of lag. I was just quickly going to say I didn't realize that until when I was first getting into the movie, and of course everybody was saying online in the fandom, "Oh, how did it get a PG rating?" And I'm like, I was so confused until I realized that it was different in the US than it was in Canada when I was still living in Canada. So, but yeah, I guess to each country to their own, and it's a totally different rating system. I believe in Europe it's the equivalent of G. We checked that last night as well. But okay, well, this is a question that I've been very curious, especially over the last couple of years, seeing a lot of these musicians live. So, of course, the final version of God Help the Outcast is a mix of drafts and demos of God Help the Outcast and drafts and demos of Someday, and the initial song that was written for Esmeralda Inside of Notre which was the initial song that was written for Esmeralda Inside Notre Dame. But what was the creative process like writing the scene and going through the multiple iterations of God Help the Outcast and Someday, and what led to the final version?
Well, actually, we started with God Help the Outcasts. That was the first, that was Alan's and my first impulse. And
Okay.
at some point along the way, Jeffrey Katzenberg felt that he wanted a more anthemic song and a more maybe liftable, if you will. And so Alan and I went back in and wrote Someday, and then Jeffrey decided that he actually thought God Help the Outcasts served the moment better. And again, tribute to the studio for really trying to make the decisions with the highest artistic integrity. And so that's why we went back to God Help the Outcasts. It was really the studio decision. Of course, as you know, Emily, what wound up happening for the stage version is that both songs are in it, because the stage version is expanded and longer, and there are more songs, and consequently, God Help the Outcasts remains the song that Esmeralda sings in the cathedral, and then later on, when she's imprisoned by Frollo, she and Phoebus sing Someday.
Oh man, I wish we'd thought of that for the movie.
Well, it would have been too
It's a great
long.
idea.
We
Yeah,
wouldn't-
probably.
It
Yeah.
works very well on stage, is what I
Yeah.
can tell you.
It does. Absolutely does. So I guess it's again something that's a curiosity as well, is because there's a lyric in Someday that's Godspeed, despite millennium, let it come, wish upon the moon. But what the story takes place in 1482, and the millennium is still 518 years away. So is that lyric meant to reference the film's release in 1996, with the millennium only 4 years away, or was that just a general sense?
Well, a millennium is any, well, I guess that's true. A millennium is 1,000 years and not, not 100 years. But what she's talking about is the future. And so millennium in that sense is someday, But what I was aiming for in the lyric is for her to believe that these things that are wrong societally in 1482 won't be wrong, in the future, when of course we're watching the story in the future and know that they're still going on. So that every time somebody sings Someday, they're singing about a brighter future that does not exist in the present. But yeah, so basically the millennium means like by that time, all of this, we'll live in a better world, which of course we don't.
Too bad. But it is an absolute beautiful, beautiful song, and I love that song in the deleted scene and live on stage. It's always very, very well done. So
Guys,
similar.
remind me, did Someday wind up getting used on screen in the final credits, or was it just
Yes,
like
yes.
Yes.
Someday, at least for the U.S. release, was covered by Don. Was it the Bette Midler version or the Boys to Men version? I
It was
can't
all
remember.
for one.
I don't know.
Oh, it was all for one. Okay.
And
Yeah.
Europe was
Yeah.
Eternal or something. So I believe it's different in the US and Canada and Europe as well. I think it was Eternal, or I forget the exact name of something like that for the European release, and then for North American it was All for One, I believe.
Well, from Gary and I's perspective, we always loved God Help the Outcasts. There was an intimacy to it and a simplicity to it, and it really felt like it was coming from the heart of Esmeralda's character, and there was something, there was just as I said, a simplicity and an innocence to it that we loved so much. And it just seemed, sort of the perfect moment to show how it's what's in Esmeralda's heart that where we literally see the light of God shine down on her through the rose window, which was kind of a further illustration of how. And this was something, Stephen and Alan and our entire creative team talked about from the get-go, is how we were going to treat the cathedral like a living, breathing character itself. And it was a chance to visually show how the cathedral, kind of frowns upon its enemies, yet smiles on its friends. Again, showing through lighting and music and shadow, showing both the wrath and the grace of God. So that was again a key moment for to help get that across.
Again, a very beautiful scene, and I love it for all those reasons, Kirk, of showing off Notre Dame and seeing that connection between Quasimodo and Esmeralda, when Quasimodo notices Esmeralda there, and I love when his face lights up and just he essentially feels like, oh, he's met somebody that he can connect with, and that's such a beautiful moment. And again, also in the stage musicals as well, the Switzerland production did that really, really well. So another deleted scene question, similar to to Someday, or God Help the Outcast, Someday, like, because you guys had written In a Place of Miracles, As Long as There's a Moon, and A Court of Miracles. We're all for the Court of Miracles scene. So how did you ultimately decide on the Court of Miracles to use and cut In a Place of Miracles and As Long as There's a Moon?
Oh man, this is like a PTSD question.
Oh, sorry.
No, I feel for Alan and Stephen and all of us actually, because that Court of Miracles and that whole area of the movie was always moving around so rapidly, because you wanted to hit on it. It was important. It was visually important, but it was visually really complex to animate and create. and the songs were great when they came in. But in again, in that era, animated films were maybe 80 or 90 minutes. It wasn't like you could do a 2 hour film, and it has to earn song moments. So things like a ballad has to be earned, and there's almost two ballads in the movie with Heaven's Light. And so the Court of Miracles, Place of Miracles area was always this, not debated, but just, question mark. And I don't know, you guys have a probably better handle on the ups and downs of it, but it was complicated.
Yeah, I mean, Hunchback of Notre Dame, to my knowledge, has more songs in it than any other animated musical.
I think
I
that's true.
believe still.
Yes.
Wow.
Most animated musicals had 5 songs. Maybe there were 6 or less, and I think there are 8 in the animated Hunchback of Notre Dame. Yeah, I think that was. I think Don has described it very well. There's the sort of time constraints and moving the story forward constraints that exist within that genre that don't apply as much to stage, which is why on stage they do in fact sing in A Place of Miracles. It's also on stage very complicated because Esmeralda sings and Phoebus sings, and then Quasimodo is watching them, and he sings, and everybody sings in counterpoint, and that's the kind of thing you can do on stage that is very, very hard to do on film, whether it's live action or animated. Counterpoint and people singing simultaneously is a much happier moment on stage, much more felicitous on stage than it is on screen. You have to do split screens and all sorts of kind of slightly cheesy effects to achieve it. So I think that was one rationale, but more than anything, I think it was the impulse to move the story along. I know Alan and I never we were not heartbroken. Let me put it that way. That was not something where we were coming into the directors and saying, "How could you do this? Don't cut that." We recognized the demands of the medium, and felt that the story was being very well told, and did not feel abandoned or betrayed when those songs didn't wind up in the movie.
It's always such a challenging process, deciding kind of where you're going to spend kind of the limited amount of real estate that you have in at least an animated feature in the 1990s, as Don pointed out. They had to clock in at around 85 to 90 minutes, and that was literally had to do with math. It had to do with the number of artists, the schedule, the budget. All of these things had to be managed, and all of our resources artistically had to be deployed in such a manner that you could get your movie done within a particular time frame. So there were always trims and cuts and sacrifices that had to be made, and hopefully ones that would be invisible to the audience. And as Steve had pointed out, we had also kind of built up kind of a big head of steam narrative wise leading into that sequence. We knew that Quasimodo had been manipulated into essentially betraying the location of the Court of Miracles by Frollo. We knew that Frollo and his 1,000 men were on his tail, and there was only so much time you could sort of keep the audience in suspense in an animated feature, before you pulled the trigger on that, before Frollo was going to show up and round everybody up and put them in jail. And so as beautiful as the songs were, it always fought a little bit with that narrative drive.
We had to do things like I remember, Kathy, we sat down with you because we were behind on production, and there's what Kirk was saying in terms of limited bandwidth, and Frollo's hat was really hard to draw and clean up. The animators were really behind, and we said, Kathy, is there anything at all we can do as we get towards the end of the movie, because the damn hat is slowing us down in cleanup? And you know the story as well as we do. And she said, "Yeah, let's just knock the hat off."
That falls off, and yeah, you
Yeah,
never again.
yeah.
Look,
So
you can see why this was such a challenge production wise.
yeah.
Yes.
And it was just dragging, the whole production was being dragged down by Frollo's hat. And so Kathy said, "Yeah, we'll just knock the hat off." And so Frollo's hat goes away for the whole end of the movie, and but it makes him crazier in some ways because he's hatless, and the hat ended up in
Oh,
Kirk's bedroom.
the cleanup crew was so happy.
Yeah,
I always thought that was a character decision to
of course
show
it was. Of course,
his disintegration, his psychic
yes.
disintegration.
We made it
so
work.
funny.
We made it work both ways. It ended up serving a dual purpose. Yeah, he looked more crazed with the hat off because you could sort of show his tendrils of hair like dangling in his forehead and stuff like that. Yet it was a huge relief for the cleanup crew and a way to help us, meet our production deadline.
Yeah.
Both things can be true.
So similar to on the Court of Miracles scene, we just heard from Gary yesterday that there originally was a jazz, more Broadway type version of the song The Court of Miracles before the actual Court of Miracles. Is that true?
Wow, he's remembering something I don't. I do remember, and this would be a better question for Alan Menken, frankly, than for me. I do remember that there musically it was felt that the Court of Miracles, getting into the Court of Miracles was not scary enough, was not didn't feel like enough of a threat. So now that you're reminding me of this, Emily, I think Alan did rewrite the music, and I adapted very slightly the lyrics, but basically Alan took what was there and just did different music that felt more ominous, that was more, like Sansom, rattle, whatever that is, Dance Macabre. I think he was inspired by Dance Macabre for the feel of that, so it would be scarier.
Yeah, I actually love the moment that we ended up with the Court of Miracles song when they're sneaking through the catacombs and they're ambushed by the disguised gypsies. There's something just delightfully sort of scary / fun about that, and how it turns into the absurd trial with Clopin, doing all of his little quick change bits. It's really fun.
So I know that In a Place of Miracles did make its way back to, well, a version of it made its way back to the stage musical, but and they do have the deleted scene in the cut or the additional features in the DVD along with As Long as There's a Moon. But when the Legacy Collection, yes, sorry, thank you. When the Legacy Collection soundtrack remaster came out in 2021, all of the other songs were there, but As Long as There's a Moon was cut. Is there a particular reason that scene wasn't remastered?
I don't know. I quite often one would think the filmmakers would be consulted, but quite often the good people at Disney, and we owe them a lot, kind of forge ahead with decisions, and things happen. So don't know why. Don't know why.
I mean, it may be, if I'm remembering back, I think that As Long as There's a Moon is a nice song, but let's be honest, or at least in my opinion, it's not of the same level of quality as what wound up, certainly in the stage show, and that initial impulse of In a Place of Miracles. I just think it's just a better song, frankly.
There was a wonderful moment worked into. I remember that you wrote, Stephen, that came out of some of our story jam sessions in Glendale, that I will always miss. And we had some terrific boards done for it. It was where Quasimodo sees himself reflected in a chalice, and the distortion that it creates on the chalice's surface morphs Quasimodo into kind of like an alternate version of himself. Yeah.
Right. The opposite of a funhouse mirror.
Exactly.
Yeah. That was a brilliant idea.
It's a moment that to this day I still wish we could have found a way to include in the movie. But
it seems like you tried to. Were there several? I know the Place of Miracles scene tried to incorporate the chalice visual, but I've seen a couple other bits and bobs of artwork that have variations on that scene. Like I think there's one where Quasimodo does that in the bell tower. Was that really something you guys fought for, but just couldn't figure out how to make work?
Again, it's one of those ideas that came up in story meetings. It seemed perfect to musicalize because it was a really kind of personal and kind of beautiful moment. It was actually inspired a bit by the movie Mask with Eric Stoltz and Cher. So we were kind of going for that sort of Mask moment in that moment in our film. And again, you know, some of these things get lost in the fog of filmmaking, and we were never able to quite find a way to kind of wedge it in after we ended up abandoning the song.
You know, I want to jump back to something that was brought up earlier because we've been talking a lot about, and this is usually the process where the song will precede the storyboarding and the animation, etc. But one of the things that was really exhilarating for me, and I believe for Alan, about working on this movie in terms of how collaborative it was that sometimes the opposite happened. And you guys mentioned the Brizzi brothers, and I just want to say that the opening sequence, the Bells of Notre Dame, which I think is a pretty impressive opening sequence, actually was storyboarded first. And Kirk and Gary and Don had worked with the Brizzi brothers and had worked out this entire story. And Alan and I were brought in and shown the storyboards. And then we wrote a musical number to tell that story, which was a lot of fun for us. I was reminded of that, Patrick, when you said, you know, is this an image that you were trying to get into the film? I think it's important to know how much the storyboard artists with Kirk and Gary and Don were very, very contributive to how this got written, how the story got told, and that everybody was inspiring everybody else.
Exactly. It was really a hand in glove process, and it was such a privilege and a pleasure to have both Stephen and Alan in the room with us as you know, collaborators. So right at the beginning of the process, I mean that was how this movie came together, and
So true. I don't think people realize how hand in glove it was, because there's a lot of ivory tower writers out there, and this was not the case. You guys were with us every step of the way, so we could make changes and show you things, and you could be around the visual development. And we had a whole studio of people in Paris working on this, so that whole opening 5 minutes was not only storyboarded by the Britzis, but it was animated in Paris. So, and it really feels like it. I mean, I'm so grateful to those guys to be able to, you know, turn that whatever that vibe is in Paris, and the sense of architecture and Victor Hugo and all that stuff. It really lives in that song and lives in the lyrics and the opening of that film, and it puts so much story into 4 minutes. Like I always marvel at that, because it's the miracle of musicals, which is you can musicalize that much plot in 4 minutes that would be awful to just do in narrative. And I don't know, it opens up musically with the themes from Hellfire, and the fabric of the musical is set up early on, and it's just a really sophisticated piece.
I also love that song and agree. I agree with everything that you're saying about the architecture, and I have a few questions about that down the road here. But so I'm, well, as you can probably tell already, huge, massive fan of the original De Glockner von Notre Dame from 1999. So I'm very curious about what the process was from developing, well, not even necessarily the movie to De Glockner, but to De Glockner to the other stage adaptations and the current libretto, and what your thoughts are between the differences between the original 99 production and then the English, 2014 to 2015 productions, and then through to the German revivals, and now the Japanese tour and the second German revival, and all the productions in between, and in that transformation. Because I love all of them in their own right, but I truly am such a huge fan of the original.
Are you talking about the stage version that was done in Berlin in '99?
Yes. Oh,
Whose
absolutely.
Parish being Quasimodo? Yeah, that was written and directed by James Lapine, Pulitzer Prize winner and Tony Award winner and everything else. Major musical theater director. One of the things about it, though, was that it was very complicated and dazzling scenically. There were all these elevators that went up and down, etc. And it turned out that was hard to do anywhere else. And a lot of the storytelling was dependent on that scenic concept. And it also was felt that it didn't quite yet embrace enough the fact that it was now going to be a theater piece as opposed to a movie. Kirk earlier said that one of the concepts of the movie was that the cathedral itself was a character, came to life, and that wasn't as entirely embraced in the 1999 stage version as in the subsequent stage version. It went from having, as in the movie, there are sort of three gargoyles, but you get that the cathedral itself is a character, and that kind of remained. The three gargoyles remained in the 1999 version, but in the final version, it's the entire cathedral. Speaks to him. It's not just these three characters. And the idea of this choir, which was kind of the voice of Notre Dame and everything, there were ways of kind of theatricalizing these concepts that we all felt had not fully been realized in '99. Also, the final version, frankly, sticks closer to Victor Hugo, and it's more tragic, if you will, and a bit more adult, and I think that was another thing everybody was kind of aiming for. If we're going to do this, let's do it fully, basically.
Is there any possibility that original production would ever be remounted, even in a special limited run capacity, or is that completely done?
I think that's extremely unlikely. I think everybody is really, really happy with what exists for the stage right now. It's been a huge international success. As you point out, it's going back to Japan yet again, and it's been done all over the world. So I
Schools
think,
love doing it.
Yeah, I think that's the version, frankly. Yeah.
So similar to those lines, there has been so many theories circulating online as to why the English productions didn't officially go to Broadway. There is so many. That is one of the most talked about topics in the musical, well, in terms of the Hunchback musical and in musical space when it comes to this particular adaptation. So is there a definitive answer as to why the English production didn't transfer to Broadway?
Yes. It has to do with the Disney brand, which for some reason in America and actually in London, they're more careful about the age range for something that has the Disney name on it than they are in the rest of the world. But in America, if it says Disney's anything, what it's saying is you can bring your 8-year-old. And I know when the stage version was done in the States, not on Broadway, they had to issue a warning. They had to say it had a PG rating, if you will, or a PG-13 rating. And I think Disney has been cautious about that. That being said, there's constantly talk about a first class production in London and or America, and I wouldn't rule it out, but I
Ah,
think that has to do with, and also the company itself is changing a bit, and the theatrical vision is changing a bit. But yeah, it has more to do with the Disney brand than anything else.
because the biggest theory is, oh, because the choir was too big and it was too expensive to produce.
Well,
That is the
there's
number
that too.
one.
I mean, there
Okay.
is that too. That the way equity rules work, etc. Um, it's harder to figure out how to do it in a so-called first class production, because the idea of this 32 voice, at least 32 voice choir is singing a lot of, singing all these pieces in Latin and sort of being the spirit of Notre Dame is built into the storytelling, but that can be gotten around with, you have to make a deal, frankly, with equity, but equity is usually open to such a thing.
Because I was at the concert
Hello, Tab.
style. Hey Tab, how's it going? Oh,
What?
give him a second. Oh.
Yeah.
While he gets set up, so I was also at the West End production in last summer, or yeah, West End production was it last summer already? My goodness, time goes by. I saw a ton of productions last year, and they all after a certain amount of years, they all just kind of blend together in a good way. Like anyways, lovely production. I did the Switzerland one as well, and just before. And is there you had mentioned about possibly bringing a larger scale production to the West End? Is that what I'm hearing? Or maybe another concert version? Or what does the future look like for the musical?
Yeah, it's constantly under discussion. So we'll see what time brings. I mean, what you're referring to was a 2 night concert version in the West End, but basically, just took over a theater for a couple of nights. But essentially, it was a concert, and that has different economic implications, obviously, than a full out production and a full run.
Tab
Look,
Murphy, ladies and gentlemen.
Hey.
the person with whom this all started has just come on board.
Well, I'm so excited to hear what your plans are and to see how the musical continues to evolve. And of course, I'll definitely be there. So yeah, looking forward to any future plans that you might have for that. But
Me
now
too.
that everybody's
I'm excited to know too, Emily. You'll
okay.
probably know at the same time.
Oh, excellent.
But it's that moving target we were talking about before, Emily, because it's like when Nightmare Before Christmas was released, it was a touchstone picture. It was not a Disney film, and you would never know. I think Roger Rabbit was the same way, and you would never know that. It's all over Disneyland now. So times change, people change, and no one would be happier than all of us to see the stage version emerge. Just
No
about
kidding.
Well, now
Well,
that
I just want to say hi because I think I'm in now. Am I in? I don't know.
yes,
Yes, you are.
Okay.
I see
Okay.
you.
There we go.
Gotta hear you too,
Like
though.
I'm like, I managed to screw up everything that I touch that's technical. So I'm keeping my hands away. Anyway, great to see everybody. But I wanted to say hi to Stephen because I haven't seen Stephen since New Orleans.
Yeah, a long time, 1995
I
or
know,
something.
I know, like, and
I know.
it
It's
just,
really nice to see you.
it was a great experience, and I'm just glad I get to say hi to you after all
Yeah.
these years.
I'm gonna have to jump off in 5 minutes, so we're a
No.
little bit chips in the night here, but
No, go
it's
for it.
great to see you. I can set it up that the way this all began was Alan and I had been working together for Disney. We were kind of wrapping up Pocahontas. That was going very well, and Disney came to us and said, we'd like to do another animated feature with you guys. What would you like to do? And they gave us Tad's screenplay, or what you had put together, among some other things to consider. And when we read what Tab had done, we were like, we want to do that. So it all really did. I mean, I don't know how much Kirk and Gary were involved with the creation of that at that point, or you, Don, but I know it had Tab Murphy's name on it, what we read, and we were like, yep, let's do that.
Yeah, that
Yeah,
probably was a treatment because Jeffrey, was so, I had written a 25-page treatment, turned it into Jeffrey. He, on a weekend, you always, and he called me on a Monday saying, I love this. I'm greenlighting this movie off the treatment. And here we go. And I don't think Kirk and Gary had come on yet, but I think
that's
what happened was the process was they got a call. I'm not, I don't want to speak for him or Kirk, but I know this story that they got a call. They were working on a whale movie. Drop everything, kind of. So Jeffrey, I mean, getting him on board early on was just, like he became, at least, from my involvement and my experience through a lot of that, just the driving force to, he loved it. So there you go.
So with the last few minutes with everybody on, and don't worry, Stephen, we planned it so that people were overlapping a little bit. So this is completely planned. But now that we had last few minutes with everybody together, again, a very, very commonly talked about topic online is, so what is the status of the live action remake that was previously announced? Are there still plans for it to move forward, or has it been definitively canceled?
I
It's
know
Hollywood.
nothing about it. Does anybody know about Don? You might
I,
know.
I do. It's Hollywood, so things come and go, and Hollywood is not the Hollywood it was even 5 years ago. You would say, what are the big studios in Hollywood? Well, that's Warner Brothers, Paramount, and it's not anymore. Now it's Amazon and Netflix. So that's not a bad thing. It's just a real big pivot that's going on right now in the industry. I think any great IP from any company is always in play. So it's never a never when it comes to adapting things. There's no active development on the movie or a live action version of it. But you can never say never with this stuff. You never who thought there would be a live action Lilo and Stitch, and it was one of the biggest movies of last year. So how or if it would be adapted is something for another day.
Yeah, I mean, we hear a lot of rumors about Atlantis. I mean, for years and years, and I think there was active development at Disney on Hunchback, but it kind of has calmed, the waters have calmed down. I haven't heard much of anything since then.
Before we check out too, before Stephen goes, I just want to when Stephen and Alan work together, there's something astounding that happens. And collaborations aren't always easy and they're not always guaranteed, but something like Hunchback and their other collaborations are absolutely astounding. And I think it's Alan's masterwork. And I think Stephen's part of that contribution for sure. And I think the two of you together on this film, as long as we have you on the line, is important to say how stunning that accomplishment is as a piece of musical theater in 85 minutes, and how much it drove the visuals and inspiration and gave us all such great adaptation to work with of Latin mass and sophisticated psychological drama and all those things. So just while you're on the line, Stephen, I just got to say that again because the collaboration on this movie was astounding.
Thank you, Don. I've always felt that this is Alan's best score. And given the fact that we're talking about Alan Menken here, that is a big statement. I think Alan actually feels that way as well, but I'm not, I can't speak for him, but I know I feel that way. As I sign off, I want to, first of all, thank you all. And second, what Don just said, and it's what we were referring to a bit earlier, that this was an extraordinary collaborative process. We were not all in our separate rooms and our separate little towers doing our work and handing it in and, hoping that the directors would do right by us or whatever. There was so much interplay, and it was really one of those, the best idea in the room wins situations. It was incredibly exhilarating. It was one of the happiest and most fulfilling creative experiences of my entire career. And I'm so glad to be able to more or less over a computer screen look Kirk and Tab and Don in the eye and Kathy, on behalf of the whole animation team, just be able to say thank you directly to all of you, and I look forward to the next time our paths cross.
Thank you. Thank you so much,
Stephen.
Stephen,
Thank
and
you,
hope
man.
to
Thank you
see you
so
next
much.
month.
Yeah.
I think
Yeah,
we captured lightning in a bottle on this one, man. I mean,
For sure.
we did.
All right, bye.
Yeah. Bye-bye, Stephen. Wow, that was great.
Oh,
Oh,
awesome.
Kathy, I haven't said hello to you. Hi, Kathy.
Oh.
Sorry.
Kathy is
And
she's
Patrick. Okay. There we
Kathy's
go.
live from Croatia.
live from the former Soviet Union. Yeah.
Is that your vacation of choice, Kathy? Or, yeah.
It's a cycle tour. I started at Salzburg, Austria, and working my way
Outstanding.
through Greece. Yeah.
Oh, very cool. Very cool.
Mhm.
Oh, yes. Wow.
Yeah, really awesome.
Well, it's good to see everybody.
So on that note, I will turn it over to Patrick to get started on the production questions.
Now, when it comes to production, Hunchback is very different than a lot of the material you folks worked on previously. You know, Tab, you worked exclusively in live action, as far as I'm aware. And for the animation side and the Disney side, I know, you know, Kirk, you just came off of Beauty and the Beast. Kathy, you were doing animation work for Aladdin, and Don, you had a similar trajectory as, you know, Kirk just came off of Beauty and the Beast and the other films of the late 80s. Hunchback is very different than that. You know, it's not a fairy tale. It's a bit more somber, but also, you have to strike that balance of the humor and the tension. So it's a very, how did you approach this project, knowing that from the get-go, it was going to be very different than previous Disney films?
Well, I can give you the nickel tour of how I approached it because I had been working in live action. Jeffrey had moved over from Paramount, who gave me my first job. I wrote my first couple of screenplays for, and they never got made. But you know, I think I landed on his radar as a writer. He kind of liked. So when he moved over to and took over the animation division at Disney, I know he wanted to bring screenwriters in from the outside to help develop projects. And so I was just somebody that he kept reaching out to say, hey, come in and see what we're working on. And I finally went in to see what they were working on. And so it was, to me, it was fate because as a kid, I was a monster nerd of the 60s. I grew up knowing the story of Hunchback and that tragic story of Esmeralda, and because I collected all these monster magazines, and you know, and in those days he was considered, even though he was a man, he was part of that rogues gallery of Universal monsters, and so I knew that story. And then when you know the executives in the room held up Victor Hugo's book and said, "We're trying to figure out if there's an animated movie, a Disney animated movie in this," I I suddenly knew why I was there. I mean, it was just weird. And I thought, okay, this is why I'm here. To do this because I knew that story from the time I was 9 years old. And so yeah, that was amazing. And that part of the process, what was really amazing to me was that I had initial concerns about, you know, I love Disney. I grew up on Disney. I grew up on singing, you know, talking in happy movies. And I said, this is not necessarily happy material. This is, you know, it's very adult, and there's a lot of themes in here that, you know, gosh, how are they going to address them? And so I was very lucky in the sense that they said, look, you don't worry about our brand. We'll worry about our brand. You write the story you want to write. You find the movie in here. You know the boxes we need to check off on some level. Find them, see, and write what you want to write, and then we'll, you know, if you go too far, we'll pull back, which I felt like we were going too far throughout that whole movie. Nobody ever pulled back, I guess. And like, you know, in some ways, I was like, oh my God. So that gave me a lot of creative license, and it was a great experience beyond the treatment, beyond Kirk and Gary and Don getting involved, beyond I felt like I was invited into a process, unlike live action, where you turn in the script and the director says, yeah, see ya, maybe you'll get a ticket to the premiere. Okay, bye. I felt like I was included in a process and that I brought value to what I was doing to that process. And that's the first time I'd ever like felt that, you know, and been in rooms with such creativity and invited into that process. So it was the greatest creative experience of my life. I mean, truly. and why I kept doing more, So that's in my initial, sort of like development of that story, and got it to a 25-page treatment, turned it into Jeffrey. They turned it into Jeffrey, and the rest was history in terms of what became of it. So
Gary and I were given a copy of that treatment to read before a weekend. That was on the heels of getting a phone call from Jeffrey saying, guys, drop everything. I got your next movie.
That's a good Jeffrey. He did that on
And
Beauty and the Beast too. He was like, drop everything.
as soon as we heard the title, Gary and I like leaned in. We were like, okay. And I remember reading Tab's treatment, and just immediately the animation possibilities suggested themselves. And like Tab, all those the Universal monster movies were certainly part of my DNA too. So I felt a kinship with the character right away, and there was no question. I mean, Gary and I offered no resistance when we were offered the opportunity to direct the movie. I mean, I think it sort of almost goes without saying that better to have a greenlit movie than a movie in development. And Jeffrey was offering us a greenlit movie, and we were like, and we jumped on it, and we were excited to jump on it.
The other thing that was happening, and Kirk, you may remember this more than I, but the studio was having so much success, we were splitting the animation department in two. And
That's
it was
right.
like the goose that laid the golden egg. Let's cut the goose in half, and we'll get two golden eggs. And my colleague Roy Conley, who I adore, came in and from the theater and started to adapt with these guys, and he was one of the early collaborators as well. And
That's
he
right.
brought in people like Dave Getz, our art director, and people off the streets that maybe hadn't worked in Disney for a while or whatever. The Paris studio certainly was an aspect of that. So there was a sense of, let's not only make this movie, but let's rebuild it with a new crew. We
Yeah,
didn't
we had to
necessarily.
because of what was then called sort of the AB system, where we had two animation teams. We had to we had a terrific selection of supervising animators, but we had to largely build out our team from scratch, and we kind of sent out the call far and wide. I think there were even ads in the trades. So it ended up not only being staffed by American animators, but also by like nomadic Canadian animators who relocated to California and became part of our team. People like Jamie Olaf and Anne Marie Bardwell and some of the crew who worked on Roger Rabbit. Um, even some people who worked on Ren and Stimpy came in and worked on this show. Um, so yeah, talent from all over. But everyone recognized what an exciting project it was and recognized the potential in it right away. I mean, I want to say that it was our one of our esteemed colleagues, Joe Grant, who was well into his 80s by that point, who started wandering into our little corner of our multiple warehouses that made up Disney feature animation back in the day. And he saw the potential in the story, and he started doing these wonderful little thumbnail paintings and kind of sliding them under our doors, suggesting situations and characters and moments from the movie. And I remember I really took it to heart when Joe Grant, this is a guy who worked on Snow White and Pinocchio. Joe Grant was in my office and he said, "I think this movie's got the right stuff." And I was like, wow, if Joe Grant believes it, it must be true.
Yeah, no kidding. No kidding. Oh man. I have a question, Kirk, and because is it my imagination or did it take a very long time to get to Quasi's final look?
Yes, that was a challenge. There was a lot of visual development done by a number of designers and animators, including Gene Gilmore and Jeep Bodo and Sue Nichols, a really talented team my gosh, Peter Dosev, Tom Enriquez, all of them contributed drawings. A lot of them inspired by kind of the Charles Lott look, which everybody was most familiar with. And we knew we had to come up. It's like we knew we couldn't make him classically handsome. That would, like a classically handsome guy who just happened to have like a physical, physical deformity or limitation. We wanted to show that like Victor Hugo described him, he was an angel who looked like a demon, and so we had to finding that balance between what would be outwardly kind of grotesque yet still allowed us to see the gentle soul within was just a matter of doing tons and tons and tons of drawings, pinning them up to a wall, and figuring out which ones we responded to the best as a team. And it was James Baxter who synthesized all the kind of looks that we felt were in the ballpark into the final design.
Yeah, and to get James on the movie, to have Kathy and James on the movie as your kind of hero and villain, that's what a producer and director does to an extent. You go like, hire the best people you can and then do exactly what they tell you to do. And I felt like to have those, two people in particular, along with many others on the film was stunning. I remember like Vance Gary did a lot of early work that was about relationships, and he would have the characters together and how they interacted. And, it's all about that chemistry of people and willing partners. And it's not that you agree all the time. It's not that it was bathed in golden sunlight, although it was sometimes. And yet that collaboration is something you're always hoping for. And I think we were lucky to get it on this one.
For sure.
Well, speaking of villains, I mean, oh my God. I mean, Kathy, I don't know if you get people's therapy bills sent to your house. Because I get that all the time when, once in a while I can do these Comic-Con things and sign some posters, and people just come up and go, that Frollo, oh my God, he just destroyed my childhood. And it's just, I don't know. I tell people, maybe wrong, but I don't think Disney would make that movie today. But no, I mean, it was of a time and a place, and I'm trying to like synthesize what time and place, but there was a definite urge, I think, on Jeffrey's part to spread the studio's wings. And Don can probably talk more to this than I can, but that allowed things to pass through the filter of, yeah, that's Disney, or no, that's not Disney, in a way that I just don't think they would pass muster these days.
Yeah, I think we stand on the shoulders of the movies that came before us, like the Beauty and the Beast, the Aladdin's, Lion Kings, and that kind of matured the audience into thinking animation wasn't just a kids medium. Jeffrey left during the movie. It was a very contentious kind of split up between Jeffrey and Michael Eisner, so he wasn't there for the whole process. But we were, Roy Disney was, and he could have shut us down any minute because his name's on the door. So that was just a vote of confidence. And I think, it is debatable whether Disney today may make a movie like that. But who would have made a movie maybe like this would be Walt Disney. If you look at the first 5 movies that Walt Disney made, like Snow White and Pinocchio, and there's some
Bambi.
dark stuff. Bambi. Walt wasn't afraid of drama and darkness and of animation as a medium for the whole audience. I didn't know Walt Disney. We were lucky to work with some people like Joe Grant that worked with Walt. But I like to think that the kind of step into this kind of drama would have been something that would have been a comfortable fit for him.
Yeah, wow, that's great insight. Thank you. I mean, I've spent a lot of time in the room with you guys for the first year of that project, and then I went off and did other things. But I'm just curious if there was ever a point when you looked around at some of the material coming in or the songs coming in, going, are we really pushing the envelope too far here?
I never questioned it because I always believed that I sort of believed in kind of a hive mind that we became all of the artists working on the project had a very deep affection for the Disney tradition, and would instinctively, you know, create work that fell into line with that tradition. Yet at the same time, as Don pointed out, understanding that the Disney tradition was about the light and the dark, and that it was okay to have moments that were darker and scarier and more intense, so long as they were leavened with moments of light, and so long as you know, you sort of emerged from the darkness into the light. Obviously, that was our biggest change from Victor Hugo, certainly, as you know, Ted, because you did the original adaptation. But I feel I just collectively trusted the team to kind of modulate throughout the entire process, and I knew kind of in my heart that we were going to be able to deliver something that both honored the spirit of the original material, yet could still sit comfortably on a shelf, you know, with the Disney classics leading up to that point. Not to say that it wasn't a challenge, because it was. You know, it was something that kind of weighed on our consciences all the time. But again, it was a shared effort. There was never a time that I recall when we thought that oh, this time we've gone too far.
Really, even with I was in the room with you guys when the tape came in for Hellfire. And I remember I don't know if we went to Don's office or it was a cassette tape delivered by FedEx.
Drugs, yeah.
And then you put it in, and we played, and my memory is, Kirk, when it was over, Kirk, you said, well, that's never going to make it in the movie. I mean, I think we just sat around.
I might, who knows? Yeah. I think we were all blown away by it. I think it definitely, we might have had to take a beat to give ourselves permission to go there.
Yeah, I think I think that's what it was, because we were, I think, all just huddled and listening and going, oh, in my mind, I was going, oh my God, it's pinched me. This is a Disney movie.
Well,
there is that balance. And oh, sorry, Don.
We just gave it to Kathy and said, you figure it out.
Yeah, Kathy, I mean, I want to hear more about your inspiration for him.
My inspiration? Well, I mean, first of all, the material's there, and then listening to the song in particular. I don't know, there's just something that you just reach inside of you, and I just somehow connected with that character. I don't know why. I think for me, it was kind of like, sometimes I would think, what would Esmeralda be creeped out about? So I would take her point of view. And so that gave me sort of like a feeling for what Frollo would do to make her feel uncomfortable. So I kind of sometimes would do that in my head to reverse roles. And then I just watched a lot of villains in different movies just to see what makes a good villain. And of course, they're all different and their situations are different. But
and the voices had already been recorded, right? I mean, I'm assuming by that time.
Yeah.
So you also had that amazing delivery.
Yes, Tony J. Yeah.
Oh my God.
Kath, was there a particular actor that you found yourself referencing more, like a classic actor in the history of film that you found yourself referencing when you started to create your performance?
Well, I mean, at times Anthony Hopkins a little bit, just power he had, and the way he would stare people down without saying much. I felt like that made very uneasy situation. But yeah, I just feel like, just listening to the voice, Tony J's voice, really, and seeing the boards, it just it just goes into your imagination, and then you can just pull it out. And
I always felt like that. I always got like a very distinct Peter Cushing vibe from
Peter.
from Frollo, even if that wasn't
Yes,
intentional.
yes.
I was always feeling Peter. I was always feeling Peter Cushing slash Hans Conried.
well, yeah,
Cool.
I was trying out. I mean, I did a lot of designs for Frollo, trying just to go all out and try all different types. Yeah, then I sort of kind of landed a little bit with Hans Conried, just his types.
It's just a hint. You just feel his DNA a little bit in there.
Yeah, a little bit.
Yeah.
But yeah, I had done one. I don't even know if I should say this, but it looked a little like Peter Schneider.
I remember that one.
I do, but you guys were like, no, move that one.
We're not going to go there.
You're not gonna
No.
The boyish Frollo.
Now, I know you mentioned, some of you have mentioned inspiration from some of the earlier film versions of Victor Hugo's stories, such as the great Charles Laughton film. Lon Chaney's name might have come up. Were there any other sources of inspiration for this movie aside from those earlier films and Victor Hugo's original novel, especially artistically? I mean, there are so many great illustrated versions of the novel.
Well, I will just quickly say I used the Laughton movie. And to be honest, I didn't read the Hugo. I didn't have time, man. I had to read.
You heard it here first, folks.
Yeah, I mean, it's like, oh my God, give me the Cliff Notes version. But the Laughton movie was my sort of roadmap for sure. And that's kind of what I went off of and I knew ultimately the characters that would have to be that would make up the dynamic of the characters in the Disney movie. They were pretty easy to pull out and know that those conflicts would work well. The biggest issue for the longest time in terms of writing the treatment was, Disney has a big box they check off, which is magic. There has to be magic in the movie. Most of their animated movies have some element of magic. And I was like, well, where's the magic in this? Here's this boy, he's being kept up in this bell tower, and it's just it's kind of a nightmare situation. But I think it's, some of my early ideas complemented by other people coming aboard with their ideas was the bigger idea was that the Quasimodo had a vivid, rich imagination, a fantasy world in his mind. And so we were able to use that as a way to give color to the bell tower, and whenever Frollo wasn't there, and to give him, characters to talk to and so it wasn't such a dreadful existence. He was able to, access this fantasy world and make everything come alive. And that was the magic, I think, element of that the last thing I was searching for that everybody seemed to spark to and say, okay,
Yeah, and that was in Tab's original 25-page treatment. And we all latched onto that too, because that suggested, there's always the question, well, why animation? That's kind of asked of every project that was in development, and the fact that we can bring elements of the cathedral to life and keep it sort of an open question deliberately as to whether are they really alive? Is it Quasi's imagination? We took sort of more of a Calvin and Hobbes approach, where it's like, well, it's both.
Right.
And that was very freeing, and it enabled us, as I said before, when Stephen was still on the call, to treat the entire cathedral and everything in it as part of a living, breathing kind of organism.
Which is a very Victor Hugo thing. I mean, he thought of architecture as that. The other thing that was not around, I think that was around, and maybe David Stainton, our development executive, brought it in, was the classic comics version of Hunchback of
Yes,
Notre.
Classics Illustrated. Yeah.
Yeah, and that was kind of his entree into the topic, which was here's a really visualization that shows you something very different from the movies, but that was knocking around the offices for a while.
He owned a couple comic book versions. He had one from the 70s, one from the 40s, one they did in the 1960s. It's just a couple.
I think it sort of proved his point that I think it was an easy way for Staten to prove his point that, look, you can actually boil this down and adapt it into more of a simplified visual story. And I think seeing, you know, in a marketplace, you know, comics specifically geared towards a younger audience, I think that gave him sort of like visual and physical proof that you know, and permission, you know, in a way that this is something that we as a studio could tackle as well.
So you may have answered my question already, Kirk, but I was hoping that we could settle it once and for all if the gargoyles were real or not, or if they were just figments of Quasimodo's imagination. But it sounds like maybe not. It sounds like maybe, as you said, a little bit of both, and not necessarily one or the other.
I'm going to quote Bill Watterson. Bill Watterson, who created Calvin and Hobbes, the very successful comic strip of the 1980s. He always said that it depended on your point of view as to whether or not Hobbes was real, because he's 100% physically real to Calvin, yet he's just a stuffed animal to Calvin's mom and dad. We felt the same way about Quasimodo's relationship with the gargoyles. To him, they are 100% real. To Frollo's perspective, they are just lifeless hunks of stone. But because it's animation, we play with it a little bit. We allow ourselves to get a little bit loose with the so-called rules because it's more fun.
Oh,
It's more fun for us as animators, and it's more fun for the audience.
well, and you have you know, the gargoyles bonking soldiers at the end,
Yeah.
and then you know, Frollo actually, his demise is through a, you know, a version of a gargoyle that,
Yep.
you know, and he's probably looking straight into hell as that thing's coming alive and realizing,
Absolutely.
oh,
Yes.
I messed
That's
up.
his ultimate judgment.
Yes, exactly.
Well, I won't go into like a full TED talk about it, but it's funny that you mentioned that, Cav, because the gargoyle at the yes, okay, the gargoyle at the end where it spews fire and Frollo falls to the ground, so that is a true gargoyle, but the gargoyles in the movie, they're actually not true gargoyles by an architectural definition. But I won't bore everybody with that anecdote on the call, but it is one of my things that I do say. I'm like, well, actually, but speaking about being fun and all of that, that kind of leads me to, well, another question. I think this is specifically for you, Kirk, is that, well, we heard the story that the team or everyone here wanted a funny name for the third gargoyle. So it was you, Kirk, that chose the name Laverne after Laverne Andrews from the trio singing group, the Andrews sisters, since you thought that Laverne was the funniest of the three. But with Victor and Hugo being named after Victor Hugo and his middle name being Marie, was Marie ever considered to be a name before you chose Laverne?
And not that I recall. Believe it or not, we had originally, there was an earlier version of the boards where we had named the gargoyles after the three of the actors who played Quasimodo in earlier film versions. The gargoyles' names were actually Cheney, Lawton, and Quinn. Quinn was going to be the third female gargoyle, and she was going to be voiced by Cyndi Lauper. And we even
was she ever officially cast?
Yes, we did one recording session with her, and we played an earlier version of the sequence where Charlie Kimbrough played the stuffy gargoyle, who at that time we called I think his name was Lawton. We had the sort of obnoxious chubby gargoyle, who at that time was played by Sam McMurray, who was a comedic voice actor. And then the third gargoyle, the female gargoyle, her name was Quinn, and she was going to be played by Cyndi Lauper as being sort of more streetwise, a little more attitude. And we played it for Roy Disney, and he just hated it. We had kind of a disastrous first act screening. This happens a lot in animation. Believe it, you have a disastrous first act screening, you go back, you tear everything apart, you retool, and you come back. Every movie will tell you the same story, and sometimes it happens more than once. And that happened with the gargoyles early on. Roy just wasn't connecting with them as characters. Charlie Kimbrough survived that pass, but we ended up recasting Sam and Cindy. To no disrespect to either, they're both very wonderful, talented performers, but we needed warmth and wisdom, and we needed a character who could supply that, and that's why we ended up going with Mary Wicks and rewriting her character to be sort of the voice of, you know, kind of a more maternal figure, more of a wise figure who would give Quasimodo good advice. And then on the other end of the scale, we had also we ended up, to answer your question, no, we never considered the name Marie, but we went with Victor and Hugo because they sort of went together as a team. They were kind of a comedy team. And Laverne was actually suggested by our head of story, Will Finn, because we were just trying to come up with three names that had a rhythm when you said them together. And that led us to talking about famous trios, and you know, Patty, Maxine, Laverne from the Andrews Sisters came up, and Laverne just made us laugh. So we were like, okay, let's go with that, and it stuck.
That's awesome. Oh.
And just, well, just a very quick note on this, because my curiosity is, well, I know that, well, how many of you visited Paris for the preparation of the film? Did everybody on this call?
Multiple times.
My invitation got lost in the mail. I still have
It's
somewhere.
still coming, Tab. It's still on the
Well,
list.
Thank you.
you're invited whenever you want. The invitation is open,
No,
so.
I had actually been there. You know, I'd already been to Paris, and I'd been to. So I mean, I had visited there previously. But yeah. So I think we all eventually got there and seen it. Yeah.
I went during the production because part of my animation team was in France. And so I went over there for a week, and then that's when I saw Notre Dame for the first time. So I got to have a great tour of the place.
Yeah, it's amazing.
Two of the groups of people we were always most concerned about were the French and the disabled community. And I just stay up at night going, oh my God, what are we doing? And in the end, those are the two communities that supported the movie more than anybody else. They just love it. If you go to Disneyland in Paris, it's everywhere. You know, it's a, you know, such a celebration, I think, and we're so relieved that those groups of people at least understood what we were trying to do.
Unfortunately, it doesn't have nearly as much representation in Disneyland Paris as it should. But when they do show it some love, they do it very well, but it's very, very infrequent and few and far between, unfortunately. I wish it got more appreciation over here.
I will say, it's sad that there's never any Frollo merchandise.
Actually, the last two Frollo things that I've gotten were at Disneyland Paris. It was a glass with Frollo's face engraved on it, and then I'll have to send you a photo after. It was a medallion that was the title of the piece of merchandise. It was literally just like piece of decorative glass or something, and it was a little medallion, like a little paperweight thing, and it had Frollo's face on it. And I was like, yes, Hunchback merchandise, excellent. I'm gonna add it to my collection. So
I was always hoping for a breakfast cereal like Frollo's. You know, that would have been great.
They made everything but the breakfast cereal. You know, there was a collaboration with, I think, Cheerios. Like, you can get a Hunchback of Notre Dame like bauble or toy in a box of cereal, but they never made the Quasimodos, the Frollos. They did make the Hunchback of Notre Dame stained glass kit, and they made the Hunchback of Notre Dame Where's Waldo book, but and the Quasimodo comb, but no cereal.
I think there was a Frollo toy in Cheerios.
There was,
yeah.
His little guy with the red hat, I think.
Did he have a red hat? Okay.
But they really did, yeah. They really missed a bet by not calling him, you know, Quasimodios or something.
It is too bad.
They did have the candy bar, though. There was the Nestle Crunch bar.
Yes, we had the Nestle's Crunchback of Notre Dame, which
that would have been its own good name. They should have added it to the hanging alongside Frankenberry and Blueberry. Count Chocula, respectable man.
Well, Frollo used to come out a lot more at the park. I met Frollo in 2019, no, not 19, I'm sorry, 2009 at Disney World for Halloween, and he used to come out for the Halloween parades and the Halloween shows, and I just posted a really funny archived in terms of in my archives, I guess, of Frollo dancing during the villains mix and mingle, and he's just having the time of his life. And anyways, I wish that Frollo would. I wish that Frollo had more presence in the parks around Halloween.
The scarf, and he was doing this.
He was so good at Halloween.
I would have loved that.
But as you know, as everybody said on here, like Disney, it's a different time now, and I feel like the parks don't show him nearly as much. He's slowly phasing out, and I feel like he's very, very rarely out anymore, which is really too bad.
Rumor has it that Bob Iger was never a big fan of the movie, but he's gone now, so who knows?
Apparently, Michael Eisner loved it. It's anytime I hear about the movie or the making of, and I've been working on a historical manuscript, figuring out the history of all this. It seems that Michael Eisner really, really dug it.
Yeah, he did. He was a fan. Always supported it.
And then
like, I went to college. I understand literature.
That's truer than you know.
And then there was wasn't there a party thrown by who came in after Jeffrey?
I've blocked all that out with years of therapy.
Joe Roth.
Well, no, this
Joe
was
Roth
the agent.
and
the
Michael
agent.
Ovitz. Michael Ovitz.
Ovitz threw a party at his house, didn't he?
He did. I don't know if it was specifically in honor of Hunchback, but shortly after joining the company, however briefly, Michael Ovitz held a party for and invited the entire animation staff to his place.
Ah, okay, maybe that's
off
it.
his absolutely amazing art collection. I think that was the main reason for the party, to have somebody to talk about the art with. But yes, that was a very exciting time.
Yeah, no,
we had
sure.
Briefly mingling with Hollywood heavyweights.
Well, and you guys may have already discussed sort of the premiere in New Orleans. I mean, but I'd be curious to just hear what your kind of most vivid or favorite memory of that weekend was, because that was
a
just
blur.
Crazy, right?
Too many hurricanes.
Yeah, it was a 99 proof blur for sure.
Oh my God.
There was a guy named Dick Cook who was head of marketing and distribution at the time, and he was a master of event marketing. He was the guy who did, Pocahontas in Central Park, and they premiered Pearl Harbor, the Jerry Bruckheimer movie, on the deck of a aircraft carrier in the harbor in Honolulu. So he came up with it. Yeah, well, of course we'll go to New Orleans, and of course we'll get the Superdome, and we did. So it was one of those huge Disney productions, and I don't know if we'll ever see the likes of that again, because especially with streaming, animated movies seem to slip out, and they're out there and you're kind of finding them on Netflix and stuff. That's fine, but there was event kind of mentality that also was a marketing mentality. So everybody would come to they did the Electric Light Parade and Hercules in New York. Beauty and the Beast was in New York, and we had such huge events, and so that was
a $4 million parade on television, hosted by Patrick Duffy.
It was, and as filmmakers, you're kind of scratching your head, going, "Wow, like, why us?" You're so humbled by the whole thing, a little tired from the experience, thrilled that somebody cares, and so much of the marketing of the movies of that era have to do with a team of people that came up with things like showing Beauty and the Beast at the New York Film Festival. That kind of stuff was just brilliant. And so Hunchback in the Superdome with, God knows, 6 screens and live performances. And, oh my God, it was amazing. And the parade, yes, they steam cleaned the streets of New Orleans, not to imply that they needed steam cleaning, it was just an extra thing, and got ready for a Disney parade. And there's Roy Disney and Donald Duck going down the street. I was in a coach pulled by horses, and Kirk, you probably were too. And I was with Donald Duck, and I was so thrilled because people from the audience were going, "Donald, Donald," and I thought they were reaching out to me, and they could care less about me. I was just with Donald Duck. So that was also humbling.
Oh my God!
Yeah, that was a lot of fun. I mean, just they literally put our entire animation team, Kathy, and I'm pretty sure you were a part of this too. On did you not come to the New Orleans premiere,
I didn't get an
Kath?
invitation.
Oh no.
I didn't get invited, so I didn't
Oh,
go. I
I'm
heard
so
about it,
crazy.
but it sounded really neat.
oh
I
well,
had
that's
no
we'll have to
idea.
make up for that. That's
In my
terrible.
mind, in my mind, you're there.
Yeah, well, I mean, yeah, that was, they flew all of us, or most of us, sorry, I think, down to New Orleans in a plane out of Burbank, I think it was. I don't know. I can't remember. This
Yeah.
was,
Yeah, there was a chartered plane. We flew out of Burbank. It was, 2 days worth of dinners and parades
it
and
was the debauchery of the Festival of Fools. That's what it
yes,
was.
it was
2 days worth
basically
of
we
that.
we
So it
restaged
was
the
so
Festival of
much
Fools on the streets of New Orleans, and we were the fools, and that was the
fun.
festival.
Oh, it was
When you get
so much
back into
fun.
Los Angeles, Kathy, Kirk and Gary and Tab and I will take you out for gumbo as a
There
apology
you go.
for that.
That's
It
okay.
won't be,
It was wonderful though.
it, it's not quite the same, but we'll try.
Mm, fair enough. Absolutely.
Now, we've talked a little bit about the tricky part of developing the story and figuring out where is the Disney movie in Victor Hugo's novel. How do you balance tones? It seems like reading a lot of old magazine interviews and looking some artwork that has gone up for auction. And reading your first story draft tab. Um, there was a conception of the movie where Quasimodo would be, you kind of combine the Hunchback of Notre Dame with the story of Cyrano de Bergerac, where you have Quasimodo playing the role of the ugly guy who's writing love poems on behalf of a more handsome, conventionally attractive guy, but they both love the same girl. We were talking to Gary yesterday, and he said that idea was more so emphasized from the higher ups, but where exactly did that conception of mixing the two stories come from? And did it really last long at all?
Yeah, I don't recall it being a part of my initial treatment, to be honest. Maybe it was. It's
I
been,
don't remember ever reading a draft that included that, quite
yeah,
frankly.
30
So I'm
years
not sure.
ago.
Phoebus
It's
would have
been
been
long.
a poet soldier who was he had never fought before, and he really wanted to be a writer, and then Quasimodo would take advantage of that, and then at the end, Phoebus would have to join both of his talents and um, would have eventually finally drawn his sword for the first time and battled Frollo. I
Tab,
think that's somewhere in
does
the
this
story
ring any
draft.
familiar bells? Because it's not with me.
Yeah, it's not really hitting any of my buttons. But of course, I've lost a few buttons in 30 years. So maybe it's back there in
So
an
am I,
early
but that's just
draft.
due
I
to
don't
weight
know.
gain.
Yeah, yeah. But yeah, I don't recall. I don't recall anyway in terms of what I worked
If
on.
that was in an earlier draft, it's lost to the mists of time.
Yeah.
But yeah.
But that's also indicative that ideas could come and go very quickly in a
Yes.
situation, because you're writing, and like over a course of a couple of weeks you could have layered that idea in and then had a decision about it. That's not the way we want to go, and suddenly it's gone, but it does
Yeah.
make an appearance.
Yeah, and it's also kind of points up the fact that like Stephen pointed out very early in the conversation, when you're in these rooms and the stories are being developed, um, the best idea wins, and none of us were precious about anything, and someone could have easily pitched an idea in that room, and someone else could have, and it could have been sort of tried out in the room for a day before being abandoned and moving on to another idea with no feelings hurt, no toes stepped
Yeah,
on.
yeah.
It was just the nature of the process to try on and experiment and maybe even develop visually a number of approaches that hit dead ends, and then you go, okay, well that doesn't work. We're gonna try a different way.
Well, that also speaks to my experience of coming from live action and coming into an environment where everybody checked their ego at the door every day. And it really, I'd never felt a sort of a collective spirit of trying to make the best movie possible. Doesn't, just like you mentioned, Kirk, doesn't matter where the idea comes from. Doesn't matter. We're all aligned with just trying to make the best movie. And that was like so refreshing, you know. I mean, you know, just people, and it made for, there were never any bad ideas. You threw them all out there, and half of them would crack me up. Where'd that come from? But those meetings were so much fun because there was nobody looking over our shoulders, and to a degree telling us what we could or couldn't do. It was, you were just allowed to uncork your imagination, you know, and go with it wherever it led you. I mean, and then, you know, work with what would come out, and collectively kind of make a decision, as Kirk mentioned, about, okay, let's try this. It was fantastic. It was a lot of fun, just a lot of fun. And the likes of which I don't think I'll ever see again in terms of my career as a writer. I mean, because that was of a time and a day, and there was a real difference between animation and live action. Now that line is blurred. It's so, you know, and so to be invited into a process where you were told, like, oh, where you're not told, no, that's a great sequence, we can't afford that, so you need to rewrite, which I'd had happen before arriving at Disney. Well, at Disney, it was just the opposite. We can do anything. So don't, you know, like, just, you know, get past that idea that, you know, oh, I got to be careful about whatever budget, this, that. No, we can do anything. Let's go. And so much fun. So much fun.
And I want to circle back to something that Kirk mentioned earlier. Kirk, you mentioned Cyndi Lauper had done, you know, some work on the film and really wanted to be part of it. We've also heard some rumors that Meatloaf and Michael Jackson had some degree of involvement, or at least wanted to be involved. Is there any truth to that at all?
Together again.
The Michael Jackson, I can't speak to because I don't recall that, but Meatloaf for sure. We actually briefly flirted with the idea of casting Meatloaf and Cher in the same movie.
Really?
Meatloaf as Quasimodo, Cher as Esmeralda. Um, um, the Cher was kind of a non-starter for reasons I don't recall, but we went so far as to even have a meeting with Meatloaf, and it was at a recording studio off of Sunset Boulevard here in LA, and we met with Meat. Uh, he actually did a run through at the piano with Alan of one of the songs. You know, we had a very nice conversation, and we left the meeting thinking, okay, well, maybe it's gonna be Meatloaf. It definitely was gonna, like all casting decisions do, we knew it was going to sort of change our sort of visual and mental conception of who Quasimodo was going to be as a character. But we left thinking, because at the time Meatloaf had a huge hit album, that this might be a good decision for the movie. But ultimately, it didn't work out because of business reasons. It was a deal that the studio and Meat's record company couldn't make.
Wow, interesting. It's,
Yeah.
you know, so many of these movies have, you know, sort of like near misses. They're like
Yeah.
little comets that come by the big production.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
And but you always wonder what the movie would have been very different, you know.
Yeah.
But, you know,
I
I
remember
don't
we had early on in the audition process, I remember we had Harry Shearer from The Simpsons come in and audition for one of the gargoyles. And I remember, you know, he did a great job. But I remember asking him sort of in jest, okay, now read it like Monty Burns. And he came back with, you'll have to talk to the Fox Corporation about that.
Should have had him as Frollo.
Which would have been hilarious. But
Oh man. Oh God.
Now, the voice actors do play a large role in shaping how your characters are organized and how you shape the story, especially from an animation perspective. You know, the voice comes first, and that informs how the character moves, and you really organize it around the voice. How was that process with Hunchback? You know, how did the actors contribute to the portrayal of the characters?
Um, Actually, to a great degree, and the same was true with all, the classic Disney films, even in Walt's era, because we shoot video reference, oftentimes of the actor in the recording studio, you'll find little physical mannerisms or little tics, or little bits of business that the actor comes up with in the moment, kind of work their way into the animation. Um, so that's always kind of been an animation tradition. And
So
yeah,
is there anybody you wanted for a character that you didn't get?
well, okay, that might be a good transition into kind of one of the most famous casting stories, or I
Oh
should say
dear.
miscasting stories about the Hunchback of Notre Dame. One of the candidates for Quasimodo was the very talented Broadway performer Mandy Patinkin. He actually auditioned for the role in New York, and uh, he had his very own kind of distinct spin take on the character, and more specifically the song itself. And he brought his own pianist, which was a little bit unusual, to the audition. He confessed that he had done a little arranging of the song to kind of put it more in his range and kind of his very distinct style. It kind of ruffled Alan and Steven's feathers a little bit, let's just say. And Mandy sang the song through, and it didn't go over really well with Stephen and Alan, that I recall. And uh, Gary and I went out into the hall with Mandy to kind of talk about him, reading one of the scenes, and he cut us off midway through our conversation, which was very pleasant, and said, "Guys, I don't think this is something I can do." And he went back into the room, into the rehearsal space where the auditions were, shut the door, and there was a very, let's just say, animated discussion that happened on the other side of that door that Gary and I were not a part of. But, it was enough to like rattle the door in its frame and make chunks of plaster fall from the ceiling.
Oh,
So Mandy stormed out of that audition, and that was kind of the end of our brief flirtation with Mandy Patinkin, um, which again is no disrespect to him as a performer, because he's amazing, but sometimes these things just don't work out.
yeah, there you
We
go.
had other actors like Kevin Kline. Whenever Kevin Kline came in, we would bring a big uh, box full of props and swords and goblets, like whatever. And he would always improvise and crack us up and pull things out of the box, and like such an amazing gift some of these people bring to our whole cast really brings to the party. Other cast members like Demi Moore was a pleasure to work with. She was so busy at the time because she was at the top of her career, and so we had to chase her across the country, and we would fly to like Fort Lauderdale and wait in a hotel room, literally wait in a hotel room for a phone call saying, "Okay, now." "Oh, not yet. No, no. Okay, now." And it's worth it. You want that. You are willing to bend to people's schedules and things. But she was at the top of her game, and but when she showed up, she really delivered. She had everything when it came to that character and what it needed. And Anne-Marie Bardwell, who animated Esmeralda, was also amazing. Heidi Mollenauer, who was the singing voice, brought a tremendous amount, because not all these people sing. I mean, Tom Hulse, wow, I could go on. I'm a huge Amadeus fan. I could go on forever about Tom Hulse, and he's such a theater guy. Demi didn't sing, so Heidi, who's a cabaret singer in New York City, came in and auditioned, and was just, her voice match was incredible. Plus,
Yeah,
she's an
absolutely.
actress. We worked with Howard Ashman before this, and he was, it's always, you got to hire actors who can sing, actors first, and then they can sing. And Heidi was really that actress. So you're just lucky to get these people on your film, and they do bring a lot to the party.
Mm.
I remember the recording session with Tony J singing Hellfire. And I don't know what your impression was, Kirk, but I mean, I felt like this was like, I don't know if it was difficult for him to sing it. I mean, he did a great job, but I remember in that recording session, I was sweating watching him sing that because you could tell he was putting every ounce of his soul into that song. And I was just like, is he going to make that note? Is he going to make that? I just remember, oh my God.
It was a high wire act for sure
Right.
for Tony. And Tony really tortured himself getting to that place to be
Yes.
able to sing that number. And he needed a lot of reassurance. We always had to tell him, Tony, you're doing great. We love what you're doing. It's terrific. He'd always say, you know, I'm an actor, not a singer. And we were like, no, Tony, you're great. It's coming from you. It's coming from your your heart and your soul. It doesn't have to be perfect.
Yeah. Well, I remember after that recording session, he came into the booth and he asked me, so did you learn anything? Because I guess he's heard, that we studied him. And I said,
Yeah.
oh yeah, I never wanted to.
That's
Wow.
funny.
Not the response he was.
Is there any footage of that recording session that's still around, or is that like gone into Disney Archive now?
I'm sure it's in the Disney archive.
Yeah, I think yes
Yeah.
is the answer. It's just probably hidden away somewhere.
Well, I
There
think the
are-
true treasure would be the footage of you, Kathy, with that big hat and that costume. I know you put some pictures on Instagram. That's just terrific to me.
Yeah.
It's just so funny that you're used to seeing this like a evil old man and it's just a regular woman, just as Frollo.
Yeah,
With
that
a
was
giant hat.
funny. So yeah, that costume, June Fujimoto, my
Seen that.
key assistant, she sewed the costume. And we really needed it because we wanted to make it as believable and quality as best as possible in animation. So having that for reference, and we had hired an actor, Frank, I forgot his full name, but he would act out scenes so we could use as reference. But it wasn't just that, a lot of us would, also shoot our own reference as well. And I would put on that costume in my office and I had to lock the door because people would love to come in and make fun of me, sitting in that Frollo standing in the Frollo costume drawing, because I'd be kind of looking at the material and seeing how it moved and things like that, and do a pose and then study again. But yeah, that was kind of funny, occasionally animating in that Frollo costume.
Wow. Wow.
So, I have
Where
a
does the
question for you,
character
Kathy.
start and where does it end here? Yeah, that's cool. Very cool.
So you're a supervising animator. So what does that mean in terms of, well, the difference between a supervising animator versus an animator, or I just forget the name of the position you just mentioned a few minutes ago.
Key assistant.
Thank you.
Oh,
Yes.
So June was a cleanup key. So she did the single line. She cleaned up the drawing. Is that what you were talking about?
Yeah,
So-
just the difference between a supervising animator, an animator, and a key assistant.
Yeah. So so supervising. So I'm overseeing all the other people doing Frollo, making sure that it's consistent, the drawing as much as possible. And I worked very closely with June, who was the cleanup key, doing the final line. Because again, there'd be some inconsistencies. And so I had to do a lot of drawovers, drawing over to get the character back on model. And then she would then do the cleanup. But then, and then I had a rough in-betweener as well, Adam Dykstra, who was really great and helping me out as well, doing in-betweens. But anyway, those are some of the, and the animator is, of course, just on my team. I think I had like 8 animators on my team.
Wow.
The supervising animator basically creates kind of the performance that everybody else is kind of keying off of.
Yeah.
as well as being in charge of consistency from shot to shot to shot, of the look of the look and the acting of the character.
Yeah, yeah, because everybody has their own little take on how they would do the acting. And so yeah, that's where you have to pull it in, and I would observe that, and give advice on how to, change the performance or the drawing.
So typically, Kathy or any other supervising animator would see the rough test before the directors did, and give the animator feedback.
Right. Yeah. Make sure that yeah, they're going in the right direction for sure. Yeah.
So there's a little bit of Hunchback lore out there that I want to clear up because I'm curious myself. And that is the sequence, of course, Hellfire, when Esmeralda comes out of the fireplace and dances in the flames before Frollo. Is it true that an executive stood over the animator and to make sure that he wasn't adding anything he shouldn't be adding?
That's only that's partially true. It wasn't executive, it was actually Gary Trousdale. Gary Trousdale was the one who, together with Chris Jenkins, who was our head of effects, personally went through, every drawing of Esmeralda that was created for that sequence to make sure that she was fully clothed. Because as I said this earlier in the talk, in the Britzi's original boards, there were moments when she was not.
Oh, is that right?
Yes.
Oh, damn.
Oh, well, there you go.
They took a more sort of European kind of like
There you
Fantasia
go.
approach.
Sure. Pushing the
Because it was-
envelope a bit.
yeah.
It's, but I mean, the sequence, even fully clothed, is fairly provocative for a Disney movie. I mean, let's
Yeah,
face it.
it's really Chris Jenkins that you mentioned. Kirk is one of many brilliant effects animators, and he's this Welsh animator that I think I
Yeah.
hired him on Roger Rabbit first, and he came over and he did all that fire stuff and the smoke coming out of the fireplace, and he's acting with Kathy's animation of Frollo, and you have to create this kind of believable, appearance of Esmeralda, and it's really, we don't talk about special effects enough, but there's a lot of it that's a key part of this story too, and it's worthy of tipping our hat to Chris and his guys and girls that worked on this.
Emily, before we hog all the time, I want to make sure you have time to air Gary's bit.
Oh, we're gonna share that later because he's
Okay.
I think his interview was just under 2 hours. It was close to between 90
He was-
minutes and 2 hours.
He was
so,
very generous with his
Oh
time.
my gosh. Okay.
That's awesome.
so yes, we're gonna share that after. And well, as for everyone here, I know I mentioned to Kirk, well, we could continue, or it was really depending on what everybody's schedules were in terms of the afternoon, but we do have a few more questions, and then if we did have time, we were thinking about opening a couple up to the viewers on YouTube, because we did take submissions and we got over 200 questions, and although
Wow.
as much as we would have loved to ask absolutely everything, Patrick and I spent, I don't even know how many hours we spent calling through and trimming
Oh,
things
yes.
down to
I think it's close
decide
to
exactly what we
30.
wanted to. So yes, it was we really tried to get a little bit of everything, but again, we would have loved to have asked the 200 and some odd questions that we got, but only so much time. So on that note, I wasn't sure where people sat for time. If Kirk, I think I think I talked more extensively with you about timing, but if people have to drop off in a few minutes, or if people are good want to continue, it's really up to whatever you guys are feeling.
I mean, I can do a little bit more, but because I'm in a hotel room and it's 10 o'clock already
Right.
here,
Yeah, you're gonna get knocks on the
I-
door and things like that.
if I
Well, I'm
Yeah.
happy to do a few more questions. I'm
Yeah.
still I still
Likewise.
have some
Yeah, let's dive in.
gas in the tank. So
Let's dive
Alrighty.
in and get through a few.
Perfect. Well,
Well, in that
Patrick,
case, I'll put the ball in your court, Emily.
okay, well, so which scene caused the most internal debate amongst the team?
I think the easy and obvious answer is Hellfire.
Yeah, I would imagine.
Because that was literally, as I pointed out before, literally that sequence became the difference between a G and a PG rating, and the volume of a single word and a single sound effect, adjusted in the mix, uh, helped get us our G rating. So I would say that sequence was great and amazing, and I love that it's in the movie, but certainly
Yeah,
challenging.
a lot of tap dancing, I'm sure.
Yeah.
There's a little moment in Esmeralda's dance during the Feast of Fools, and then the subsequent chase, where I think I had written even as early as the first iteration, the treatment, that she hides in a basket of heads from the guillotine, and that visual stayed for a while. And then I think I remember
Did.
coming in and seeing it, and it had changed to vegetables. So
Yes.
well, there's
We
probably an
no,
instance of,
that's a good call, good catch, Tab. But even I had forgotten about that. Yes, in the original boards, she she was hiding. She was a smiling head in a basket of severed heads, and it was
yeah,
really gruesome. And we did change it. This was just a matter of taste. We changed it to like vegetables with masks or some such. They're very clearly fake heads and not actual real dead severed heads,
yeah,
because
yeah.
we knew there were other things that were going to be challenging in this movie, but why invite trouble where you don't need it?
It's really too bad because it's hard to beat a basket of heads.
Well, exactly. Oh man, yeah.
So was there an alternate endings planned?
We
I don't
always
recall.
knew pretty early on that we were going to that this movie had to have an up ending as opposed to a down ending, uh, because of the nature of Disney animated movies. Um, So I don't recall there being a different ending plan. This was always the ending that we were aiming for, which was Quasimodo was propelled by his desire to be out there, to be out amongst the people, and be and end, this life of isolation and alienation, and gain acceptance. So we always knew that that's what we were driving towards.
I think
Well,
Tab, you had shared. Oh, I'm sorry. Continue.
oh, I just was gonna say that another element of the story that I know I struggled with, at least in terms of like, how's this gonna work? And I think the production also, I don't want to speak for Kirk and Gary and Don, but the idea that Quasimodo had feelings for Esmeralda, but that he
Mm.
was ultimately going to get his heart broken on some level, and then how do we, like the fear I think I had was like,
Yeah.
is he getting his heart broken because of the way he looks? That's not the message we want to send.
Right. No, we
And I,
we had a lot of discussions about that, Tab. That's also another good catch. We had a ton of discussions about that. And because we didn't want to send that message either. We didn't want to say, "Oh, it's because he's ugly and he'll never get a girlfriend." Um, so we had it more to do with basically a difference in age, in maturity. We deliberately played Quasimodo as being very boyish, and probably likely, uh, uh, with the mentality of like someone in their teens who had a crush on a woman who was well into her 20s. We always
yeah,
thought Esmeralda was older than the older and wiser than your typical Disney heroine. So Esmeralda never at any time looked at Quasimodo as a potential romantic partner, not because of how he looked, but because of his youth. He was there was a difference in just age and experience and maturity. And so we wanted it to play more like kind of a like the underclassman having a crush on like the senior girl in a high school. In fact, one of the movies that we referenced was a movie called Lucas with
Oh, I
Charlie
love that
Sheen
film. I
and
haven't seen
yeah,
that in
me
years.
too. I'm a
Yeah.
huge fan.
Great,
Lucas with
great
Charlie Sheen and
movie.
Winona Ryder and Corey Haim.
Yep.
Um, and it was funny. I remember we brought in that movie and we screened it and we were like, is this a loose remake of The Hunchback of Notre Dame? Because the more
Yeah.
times we screened it, the more we started to see parallels. And so that triangle at the center of the movie Lucas with Charlie Sheen and gosh, I forget the actress's name. It's like is it Carrie Green? I think that might be her name.
Cary
Um,
Green.
Yeah. Yes.
hey, Captain Trivia. and Corey Haim, that love triangle
Yeah.
between her and the captain of the football team and Corey, who's this kind of put upon nerd, um, that we modeled that three-way relationship of Phoebus, Quasimodo, and Esmeralda a bit after that particular movie. So that's
Interesting.
kind of the vibe we were going for. That
But
that that she clearly loved him, but as a very good friend, not as a remote romantic partner. And even though it broke his heart to see her have feelings for this older, more mature guy, he eventually gains the maturity in that movie to respect her choice.
yeah.
Um, and
Well,
and so we
he
were
also had a want that is set up from the very beginning of the film,
correct.
which is the biggest thing, the want. What does your
Yeah.
lead really
What is the
want?
want?
And
Yeah.
his want was to be out there, which
Right.
is what circled all the way back to the end and be accepted. His
Correct.
want was not, I want to meet a hot gypsy woman and,
Exactly.
right? So you already had that sort of set up but how to navigate those waters in between all that was always
Yeah.
a interesting sort
Yeah.
of
It was
challenge.
tricky. It was
Yeah.
very tricky. It also goes back to we had the song sequence in the Court of Miracles where we were going to show Quasimodo sort of how he might have been in kind of a parallel timeline where his reflection in a chalice would kind of in a reverse funhouse mirror way morph him into a quote unquote normal looking young man, and in his kind of dream fantasy he would dance with Esmeralda, and it was a very beautiful moment, but again, difficult storytelling wise, uh, because of the reasons that you pointed out. It's like, is this a story about loving and losing Esmeralda, or is this a story about gaining
Sure.
acceptance in the wider world?
Well, in that particular idea of him seeing himself as sort of quote normal and then dancing with Esmeralda leans into the direction you don't want people to go,
That was
frankly.
exactly it. Yeah.
Yeah.
That's
So
also a very common question throughout the fandom as well. And that's something that we chatted with Gary too, of what age range did the production team collectively agree on for Esmeralda? Gary had said it was early 20s, so 20 to 24 he thought for himself, or wasn't sure if that was that aligned with what you guys think as well.
I think that's fairly consistent. Like I said, we may not have landed on an exact age, but we knew that she was more worldly and more experienced and had seen a lot more than say Ariel or Belle.
yeah, yeah. Oh, for sure. Yeah. Yeah. And I don't know what age she was in Victor Hugo's book, but isn't she like
She was
16.
She's much younger
Yeah.
in the book.
Mhm.
Yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
But we
Although
went a different
Quasimodo
route.
is the same age. He's about 20.
Yeah.
Mm.
No,
Do you have it?
we deliberately pushed them apart
Hmm.
it was less about calendar age and it was more about maturity and
Yeah.
experience. The
There was a lot to be sensitive about in this story
yeah.
that ultimately everybody had to deal with, including just the fact of calling Esmeralda a gypsy. I mean, the Romani people, and I've gotten a little flack over the years from fans about it.
But believe it or not, in '93 and '94, when we were writing and storyboarding this movie, that was much less of an issue. I totally
No,
respect the fact
yeah,
that the term gypsy is not something that should be used. Um, but obviously, we were telling a story that was set in the 1400s. and
No.
and
Yeah.
you know,
It's contextual.
it's contextual. So those weren't conversations we had at the time. But you know, society evolves and hopefully, you know, keeps evolving in a positive direction.
Yeah, for sure. For sure.
So do you have any
Someday.
ideas that ultimately got cut from the final film and that you still think had a lot of potential and that you were really attached to and that you wish had left in? And on the flip side of that, what do you think what creative risk do you think that the team refused to compromise on that you're the most proud of that was left in?
Well, I'll just say, I don't know how much I don't think I actually wrote the opening of the movie. I mean, they're ideas taken from different things that became the opening, but the opening, the prologue, if you will, of that film, so much pipe is laid, so much story is told, so much, and then, you know, you have a baby hanging over a well. I mean, to me, that just it sets a tone that is just unlike any Disney movie that I've seen that opened in a way, and it's thrilling, and it's just it's wow. It just
Believe it or
when I
not,
saw it finally, it just blew my mind. I mean, really, that opening, it just
and
was.
believe it or not, there was a version, and this was written but never boarded. And Tab, you may remember this. Um, it was strongly suggested uh, by the studio at the time, actually represented by Jeffrey, um, that Frollo would be somehow responsible for Quasimodo's deformity. That literally, like Frollo's horse trampled Quasimodo and broke his little baby spine, and
Yeah, I
was
do remember that.
was responsible for his deformity. And for us, that was too far. For
Yeah,
us,
yeah.
that both for me and Gary, we were like, no, we're not going to go there. We're like, yes, this movie takes a lot of risks, but we are not going to open a Disney movie with a baby being trampled by a horse. I know that may seem like splitting hairs, but it wasn't to us.
No.
There's a real kind of collective. We've talked about this with a collective consciousness in the studio.
Exactly. That was
All of us,
that was the collective conscious rearing its
and
head.
yeah, and we encourage notes. We'll show the movie and get notes from the coffee guy, from anybody, and so you just kind of intuitively know when you've crossed that line. And all of us have grown up with Disney movies and understand what that is, and that line is always moving. But I think there's a real sense that this has to deliver for our core audience on some level. But that's a moving line.
Yeah, I mean, I guess that goes to a sequence like at the end when he's Quasi's pouring the molten coming down out of the tower. You know, intellectually, it's landing on soldiers and they're done burning to death. But then you cut to soldiers being kind of silly, trying to get in the door and stuff. So there's a visual, but you really, yeah, I mean, you
Yeah.
don't show the graphic nature of a lot of that stuff, you know.
Yeah, very
And
true.
it's a matter of taste, right?
Yeah, it's a matter of taste.
Yeah.
Now, building off the idea of a collective conscious, Don, were there any aha moments while working on the film where it just feels like the first time an idea is put out there, doesn't matter where it comes from animation, from story, from writing, from special effects, where it just feels like, oh, we got something here.
Uh, it always happens when tapes come in from the composers. So, the first time you pop and for your younger listeners, a tape is actually a small rectangular thing anyway. But when you put those in and you listen to, the opening or whatever, that's an aha moment. When you see the Britzy's boards, when you see also early animation or early color, like if you look at early animation that Kathy would send in, or James Baxter or Dave Pruxma, who did the gargoyles, when those characters come alive, there's nothing like it. And then the other thing that always happens to me, I don't know about you guys, but when the movie's almost done and in color and you look at it, suddenly it transcends all of us. It's like no longer a pencil and a paint and piece of art. It's like, oh, that's another world that exists completely on the screen. And that's always like transcendent to me, because you just feel like you're grinding through all these things and numbers and people and all that stuff. And then one day you sit down and look at it, or look at it with an audience, and it's another thing. It's taken on a life of its own, and that's just magic. I still don't know how that works.
Yeah, I had a few moments like that, especially being invited in when after Dave Getz had done a lot of work and put it up on and you just his production design or I mean, just I couldn't believe the architecture. I mean, that he was coming up with. It just makes everything come alive, like the words are on a page, but then you see it. It was such an exciting process to be a part of, you know. Well, and I had to go away in the end for a long time, and then I came back, and then I finally got to see it. I think it was at New Orleans maybe for the first time, the whole movie. I just
Wow.
it just blew me away. Yeah.
Yeah, it's a crazy process. I think that's why we all come back to it because there's nothing like it. It's very, very different than any other kind of artistic expression, and it is far more collaborative than anything else. But also, it's the the final project is so much greater than any single one of us,
Yeah. I
I
mean,
think
that's
it's easy in film. It's easy. People want a star, they want a voice, they want to talk to Steven Spielberg or whatever, and that's cool. That's totally appropriate. But in animation, and somehow, and particularly on this film, um, Tab as kind of our Genesis guy who's got us going, Kirk and Gary all the way through. But then, it becomes something that transcends any of us, and it's just 30 years later to be talking to you guys is incredible, and we owe you guys and the fans a debt of gratitude because this movie's become kind of a cult movie that is so much in people's sights, and it's so relevant today in the world we live in that I think that's become another thing about it that you never imagine. I mean, we worked on movies that have come out and are not accepted by the audience right away, and then to see years later something like Hunchback, or we all worked on Atlantis too, become these cult movies in the eyes of the audience is so gratifying. And so thanks to you guys for putting a frame around it and saying this is what we think happened, what you guys did, because we sure as hell don't know.
Well, Don, you mentioned how Hunchback has become kind of a cult movie, as well as Atlantis, which came out a few years later. How did the reception of this movie, the things people liked, the things people didn't like, how did that differ from your expectations? I won an eBay auction a few weeks ago and got this insider promotional tape, like a making of the movie from about May of 1995. And in that, it just everyone seems so positive and enthusiastic, like this movie's gonna be great. It's the coolest thing I've done, you know. Uh
All of
how
that was sincere.
yeah.
Yeah.
Oh yeah,
All of that
yeah.
was
I mean,
very sincere. We everybody on this project was really fell in love with it, and and that shows in the final film. Um, when the movie came out, it didn't do nine Lion King numbers, but it did respectably. It ultimately grossed, I think, over 300 million worldwide, and those are great numbers for any live action movie. Um, so it turned a profit for the studio, um, and has been embraced, over the years. So I have no complaints
yeah,
as
no.
far as far as the movie finding its audience.
It
Um,
also he gave Kirk, Gary, Don, because of Beauty and the Beast and then Hunchback a bit of cachet at the studio to be able to for us to go in and pitch something like Atlantis and them to
right.
say, okay, go for it. Let's see what you put together. So yeah, I'm
Yeah.
grateful to everything I did at that studio in
Um,
terms of the movies I
the
worked on.
the critical reception I recall being a little more mixed than Beauty and the Beast, but we got some absolutely terrific press from some very high profile critics. Um, so I think there was kind of a little bit of mini controversy. This was before the flourishing of the internet, so the controversy didn't really have legs. there were some conservatives in some quarters who somehow felt it was an affront to the church, which struck me as supremely ironic, given that the church in the movie is shown only as a force for good. But
Yeah.
I think the hypocrisy made them a little uncomfortable.
I know there was also some concern about having the word hunchback in the title.
Again, it was 1996,
Yeah.
less of a topic of conversation then. You know, but Don, you might be able to speak to that. I wasn't, Gary and I weren't really part of those conversations.
Yeah, it's you know, it's Victor Hugo. It's hard to say. You know, he himself wrote adaptations of his own Hunchback of Notre Dame,
You
but
did?
I think there's a lot of great kind of benefit to quoting the original author and saying, well, that's what he called it, you know, and being able to use that as your kind of point of departure. But there really wasn't a controversy about that so much. Today, I don't know if you remade it, if you'd have to call it Quasimodo or whatever, but yeah, it was just a different time. We've said that about 20 times during this interview, but it was.
That's very, very true.
It's
It's
very true. It's a
true.
different
It's
time.
true. Yeah,
No, it shows how much have changed
yeah,
over 30 years. Good
Oh my
grief.
God, don't say that out loud.
the irony is that so much has changed, yet all of the challenges that our characters faced in the story are still with us today as a society.
Well,
And
they'll be done with someday. You know, I give it a millennium.
Yeah.
Well, I mean,
So
that's the thing to me that just is amazing is that both of these movies, and I'm talking about Hunchback and Atlantis in particular, are now more popular than ever. I mean, they just truly are. And so you know, there's classic storytelling involved. There's you know, really heartfelt, you know, emotional depth involved in the stories that resonate, as these guys were saying, with issues that we are facing today constantly. What, you know, goes around comes around historically. So the fact that these movies continue to have legs and survive and are, you know, parents are showing them to a new generation. And I'm sure, I know that part of that is the Disney brand as well, but I'd like to think it's also part of the collective creative efforts of, you know, the team that was put together for Hunchback, and the team then went on and did Atlantis, two very different movies, but yeah, so it was just yeah, it never it continues to amaze me, the popularity of these films.
well, that's awesome. But actually, on that note, I have one last question, but we'll take just a few questions from the audience. I know we don't have a lot of time, but I know we did say that we would have a bit of time for questions, so I don't want to just let people down. But in the interest of time, of course, unfortunately, we won't be able to take everybody's questions, but I also want to give this moment to shout out Leslie, who's been working very hard behind the scenes, managing the live stream moderation and the chat. So I will I'll work with her just here to take some questions from the audience. So excuse me for people who are watching. There's a little bit of a pause in this as we work through the question, work through getting the questions from the stream over to us. But thank you, Leslie. I think Patrick just stepped out for a moment, so we'll use the second to let people submit some questions. But on that note, I just want to say I love that we're matching tab. I purposely changed it out. So
that's awesome.
And I have to I'm gonna reshare the photo that I had sent you earlier because it was so much fun to take that. I mean, so I think I have that one.
That was so cool. I mean, really, that was so cool.
I was like standing there and I'm like, oh, I look really silly here, but of course I know everybody there, so it's people were super into it. People there,
Yeah.
But yeah, I felt like all the visitors were like, oh, what's this random person doing? But so 1 second. Just to save Leslie will do that. And and also I've pulled out Dawn, I have your book here too. I have every Woo!
Oh
my gosh.
It's an earthquake.
It's an earthquake.
Oh, this is nothing. Like my Hunchback collection, I'm split between France and Canada right now in terms of collection. I have over 1,000 items. So this is nothing. This is like, you should see, yeah. It looks like a Hunchback museum, like exploded between my two places, but okay, I'll
Thank you.
just say here. Okay, I'll just, a few questions coming in here. We'll give everybody just a few more minutes. I know it's like that frantically, like several people are typing, so we'll give everybody an equal opportunity than trying to scramble and panic. So I know I can't type when I panic.
Are you in LA or are you up in the mountains?
I'm up in the Pacific Northwest at my parents' house.
Oh, nice.
Yeah, they're both 93, living on their own, so I come up occasionally to kind
That's
of
great.
step into the kitchen and give some relief.
Yeah.
And,
A little
and hang
sleepover
out.
too.
What's that?
Sleepover.
Oh yeah, well yeah. You know, it's always nice to come back into a house and go back into your bedroom that you lived in when you were 7 years old.
Yeah.
Oh.
Ooh, looks like we got a few questions starting to come in.
Emily, I think you're muted.
I'm surprised it only happened once this whole call, so that's good.
Surprisingly, it wasn't me.
When I used to work corporate, it was always, you know, especially during COVID, and there was always the generic lines of like, you're muted or something's off, or I don't know, we'd make jokes in the office or like, well, not literal office because it was remote, but like
I work
Zoom.
as a school teacher, and my God, so many of my colleagues, immense respect for them, but technology is always a sticking point. I don't know how many times I have to remind people that they're muted.
That was a Zoom bingo. That was it. Zoom bingo. People would find something to do. But I've been so well when Patrick and I were setting up we did a whole bunch of tests ahead of time on Zoom and YouTube, and I think I quite literally yelled out loud, "Oh my God, it's working!" Because it took a little time to try to get the streams together. And I'm like, man, I've been out of the corporate world for what, three years now, and it feels weird going back to Zoom, because Zoom, you know, of course, was my life working remotely, and now it's not. So it was weird, and so much has changed. I'm like, this button wasn't here, and all of the
You leave
new
town for
additions
a
now,
couple
so
decades and they change
they
everything.
change everything.
There you go.
I said that line so many times when I went back to visit my family in Canada after being here for like after a year had passed here, and every single time I went out, it was like, so was that street there? Was that building here? Was that shop open? So I definitely had Beavis's line running through my head that whole time. Okay, so I'll go back. Okay, I think we have lots of questions coming in here. So I'll start with the first one here. It's for Kathy. How much involvement did you have personally in animating the Hellfire sequence?
Animating it, I did of Frollo, I did all of it except for, I think there's just a couple scenes in the middle where the hooded figures are up and Frollo is running down the hallway. But I did everything else.
Nice.
Yes, Kathy was very hands-on with that sequence. She was like,
Yeah.
mine.
This is mine.
Well, it's the highlight.
amazing.
Mine or
Like a Fantasia
Mine or
sequence.
you will burn. Yep.
no, I feel a lot of gratitude that you let me do that sequence. It's a pinnacle of my career.
And I think there's actually a related one here as well. Well, hang on, sorry, so the print is a bit tiny here. Sorry about that. Okay, let's see. Did you use your own experience as a woman to make Frollo feel more uncomfortable?
Well, yeah, I actually mentioned that earlier, you know, especially when you think about the sniffing scene, that whole thing. So me having to imagine what it would be like having a man do that kind of gave me the opposite of how he should act to make her feel uncomfortable. So yeah, no, I definitely would use it. That experience, thinking about that.
I kind of have to go, so I'm going to jump in and answer a phantom question that I'm going to pretend was just asked of me. Is that okay?
Of
Because
course.
it has to do with the sequence, the Hellfire sequence, and that is one of the coolest things that happened early, you know, like in my involvement was that I was called in. I was told, hey, there's a meeting. We want you to be there. And Stephen and Alan are going to spot songs in the story, in the script. And I thought, well, oh, that's cool. So I go in, and it's just, my recollection is this: Don, Kirk, and Gary, myself, Stephen, and Alan. And on one wall of this big conference room, my entire script is taped up from page 1 to 95, and or whatever it was. And I think Stephen had a marker, or maybe a pointer, and Alan had a black marker. And they started reading the script from page 1, and then one of them would, I think it was Stephen, would hit the page of the script, song, and then Alan or Stephen would come up with a black marker and start Xing out pages of my script, which is like, okay, that's interesting. So they got to this part because I had written and worked hard on, I think I know, a monologue of Frollo in his kind of place, leaving Notre Dame, traveling across, and he's just going on and on about these torn, and about his feelings about Esmeralda versus his pious kind of rantings. And of course, like, they came to that, and boom, song, and they started Xing out all my. I'm like sinking in the chair, going, "Oh my God, I worked so hard on that." But I remember it was Alan who looked at me, and he saw this look on my face. He goes, "Oh, Dad, no, it's okay. You don't understand. It's going to be great. Your words inspire what we're gonna. It's all going to be great, And of course, I didn't ultimately see the sequence until it was done, but it was great. I mean, it was just, but it was an interesting sort of, experience to have them come in and watch their creativity in front of me as they spotted songs throughout the script, but especially the Hellfire song. Oh my God, that was just to this day is my favorite sequence in the entire movie.
Yeah.
So there you go. I have to bail for a birthday party. I'm sorry, guys.
No, that's
It's
okay.
all right.
No,
Thank you.
Don, so great to see you. Kirk,
Same here, Tim.
all you guys, and Kathy, and
I said,
myself. But Emily, I just want to say thank you for having me. This was been so much fun and Patrick as well,
Thank you.
to sort of waltz down memory lane on this movie. I never get tired of talking about it. Everybody's always curious about it. And so this has been a lot of fun for me. So thank you.
Well, thank you so much for joining us.
No problem.
Really appreciate it.
Yeah,
So good to see you, Tab, as always.
We'll see you soon, I'm sure.
Yes.
So take care, Tab. Emily, I think we're going to have to sign off too, just playing the producer, because
of course.
hotel rooms and all that kind of stuff. And I'm sorry to say that, but if you have a final question or so, that would be great.
Yes, I was just going to say I'll let Patrick ask one more, and I will ask one more, and that will be good.
Well, actually, I've already got to my final question.
Oh, okay. Sorry, I did see there was one, I think, in the chat. I think. Sorry, I'm trying to straddle like our list plus the chat plus the. So I wasn't sure if there was There was one there in the chat. No, okay, never mind. Okay, sorry, I misread that. I straddling 3 chats here. So the last and final question for everybody is: what is your favorite enduring legacy of the film, and what has surprised you the most with how fans have connected with the film over the past 30 years? And when did you realize that this film was so loved and had such a following?
There's always been people who have loved it and admired it from the beginning, and those are the people that are, have stuck with it all the way through and saw it when they were kids or whatever. I don't know. You never know what films are going to last and what films aren't. The biggest flops in Disney animation history were like Nightmare Before Christmas, which is a huge cult film now, and so to see these films kind of have a life of their own and be reinterpreted by different generations is really satisfying. To see people who were not born or were little kids when this came out and didn't see it rediscover it is really satisfying, because that's life, and it's a 30-year-old movie, and how many 30-year-old movies get a chance to talk to you guys about what they are and what they've meant to culture and that kind of thing. I think it's hard to remember anything from 30 years ago, much less what we did. So it's really satisfying to be able to just, see a new generation kind of interpret it and understand it and bring some new life to it.
Completely echo everything that Don said.
And I would just say it's always fun to see how much people love villains and relate to it, and just are excited about the hat that you had earlier.
Yes. Oh, and just a shout out to the maker of that hat.
Yeah.
Her name is Rin. We met on Instagram. She's a Hunchback super fan, and she has made several of these hats. And
Yes, I have one too.
Yes, and she awarded us both one of those hats, and it sits proudly in my office.
Yeah.
So again, just an illustration of just how beloved this movie is amongst its fans. It is so rewarding to me that these movies have stood the test of time, and that's just a testament to the love and the passion that was poured into this movie from day one, and it still stands out. The whole 3 years that I was on the movie still stands out as the happiest of my animation career, and that just has to do with my relationship with all of my collaborators, the material itself, which was so rich with possibilities, and just my joy at seeing the finished film and what everybody contributed to it.
And a big thanks back to you, Emily and Patrick, for pulling this together. It's a lot more work than people see, I think, on the screen. And we really appreciate that and appreciate your kind of love of the movie a lot.
Well, thank
So
you.
Well, thank you very much.
Thank you all for joining us and spending so much time with us. I know we didn't have a definitive end date. We were just kind of, or end time, sorry. We were just kind of like, well, we'll see how time goes. So thank you so much for being so generous with your time. And we learned so much. And it was great to have everybody together in the room to celebrate how much we love this movie.
It's our pleasure, really.
It was great.
Yeah.
It was great to be here. So you're gonna keep going and show Gary's part as well.
I think we'll stop here and then we'll share Gary. We gotta save something for tomorrow. So we'll or
Okay,
tomorrow
very
or the
good.
next day.
For the
Depends
actual
how long
30th
it
anniversary.
takes, how long it
Awesome.
takes to go through everything. And I'm so anyways, yeah, we gotta keep a little bit more to still give out. So but
Very
that will be coming. So
Awesome.
Great.
Well, thank you again for this, Emily. Thank you, Patrick.
Thank
This was
you.
really a pleasure. It was
Appreciate
a
it.
lot of fun.
Yeah.
Good to see
Bye.
you, Kathy.
Cycle safe.
Seeing you guys. Take care.
Okay.